Give everybody just a few minutes to come on here again. This is Ron Woody. I'll do an introduction at that time, or welcome. My cousin Kristen Ellis just joins us. Good to see you. We're all cousins, you know. If you got a last name, it's pretty close. So MacKenzie, how many signed up? Do you know? We've got 40 that's come online so far.
We have about 120 registered for it today.
So we want to give them just a few more minutes.
That'd be great, yeah. All right, Ron, do you want to kick it off?
Okay. So we still have a few coming on, but we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning to our participants in the West Coast, and good afternoon to those here on the East Coast. I am Ron Woody, the Roane County Executive and currently the Chair of the Energy Community Alliance. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this Energy Community Alliance Continuing Advancing Alliance webinar series. Today, we're excited to continue our discussion on workforce development across the DOE complex. From looking at what the current needs are, how to prepare a future workforce, and how to apply the lessons that we've learned from our existing workforce that we've initiatives across all of our sites. ECA began this series of meetings to help highlight opportunities, challenges, and to identify partners with common goals, ensuring that we have a workforce we need to continue DOE's environmental cleanup mission and to support potential new nuclear missions in our communities. While we focus on building the workforce through STEM initiatives, during our last webinar, today we will look at how small businesses working on EM missions in our communities are addressing workforce needs and discuss how local governments can support their efforts. We will also be introduced to the Center for Workforce Development, a potential new partner for collaborations. You know, when we study successful jobs or projects, there are a number of attributes that come to mind. Leadership, of course, is always at the top. We have in leaders like Ken Reuter of UCOR. But as you look deeper into the success of large scheduled projects, you see a host of leaders and many other successful minor projects that tie everything together. For those that know me, you know, I always have some type of metaphor here, and this is going to be another one of those little trot line metaphors, that you have to have a strong line, you have to have strong leader lines, and then you have to have hooks to have a successful trot line, and a few other things. But there's many parts that come together for jobs, projects, and regional success to try to catch that fish and have a successful project. And this is where Jim Campbell comes in. Jim Campbell, his leadership as president of the East Tennessee Economic Council, ETEC as we refer it, is an organization that helps hold things together and leads our region. So we will hear both from our local leaders here, Jim Campbell and Ken Reuter from the Oak Ridge site, along with many other leaders that have helped make current successful workforce programs and will help make the next successful workforce program. Success takes place with continuation, either with current leaders or as we transition leadership in and with companies. We have had this continuation of many of the same leaders in the same companies here locally. Let's keep doing what is successful. And to close the fishing metaphor, so to speak, you also have to have a good bait. And sometimes that's just the old shad minnows that we use. And for all of us local officials, maybe we're just that shad bait, that's used. So it takes us all to really land that fish, Jim and Ken Reuter. Now, a lot has happened since ECA's last webinar. We have a new administration settling in, and we're looking forward to working with the incoming officials. But we are lucky to have some of our friends in DOE who we continue to work with. Kristen Ellis, a longtime partner of ours at DOE, will be here. Sharon Mara of SRS to shed some lights on DOE's path forward. We thank all of our speakers for taking the time out of their busy schedules, and specifically EM's continued support of ECA in our communities. We are hopeful that this year we will eventually have some discussions in person, but until then, we are truly appreciative of the reception and the engagement we have managed to achieve virtually. Again, thank you for attending and participating with us today. We look forward to productive conversations. And now I'll turn it over to Carol Colton here. Kara, I made it after all. I got off the call with the governor, but we're here to hear from everyone. Kara, I'm turning it over to you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thanks so much, Ron. And actually, I am going to turn it over to MacKenzie Kerr from ECA, and she is going to MC for us today. MacKenzie?
Thanks, Kara. Thanks for sharing the spotlight and the microphone. Good morning and afternoon to everyone joining us today. I am MacKenzie Kerr, ECA's program manager, and I will be emceeing. Let me start by thanking our audience for attending and our speakers for participating. As Ron said, this is the third webinar in our Advancing Alliances series, which is a webinar initiative ECA created last year to bring everyone together amidst a pandemic and also amidst tackling the challenges of creating and maintaining a strong nuclear workforce. The first time we hosted a webinar in our series, we talked about how workforce issues are being defined across the complex and the opportunities to work with the national labs. We also had a conversation about collaborative recruitment and a discussion with the unions as well. In the second webinar, we had a chance to talk about STEM and education, even hearing from a panel of education representatives. We also outlined how communities and industry goals often align and small steps taken at the ground level pay off in terms of project success. Today in our webinar, we will have the opportunity to hear from unique perspectives. We hope these conversations lead those in the audience and those on the panels to a better understanding of active recruitment for an effective workforce. It speaks volumes that we continually have hundreds of people register for our webinars. It is clear that the interest and passion to learn how to enable future success is present. Workforce is critical to our local communities, and the ECA Board of Directors asked us specifically to focus on workforce topics to ensure lessons learned at different sites are used to educate everyone on what we can accomplish. We'll be hearing from an Oak Ridge case study panel later today. Workforce also is a priority not just with the local communities in the audience today, but also in the new administration. President Biden's administration has created a new position of Director of Energy Jobs, which is to be filled by Jennifer Jean Krupke. It is promising to see a specific position created for energy-related jobs within the Department of Energy. That is something that at ECA we recognize as an opportunity to collaborate between program offices. As a reminder to everyone in the audience, please utilize the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to pose questions to any of the panelists. And thank you to our panelists again who are joining us today. We are ready to have some great conversations. And with that, I will introduce our first panel. To start our webinar today, we are going to hear from small business leaders. It's a viewpoint that we haven't had yet, and we are excited to hear from 3 leaders in that field. First, we'll hear from John Longenecker. John Longenecker is the president of Longenecker and Associates, and he has more than 35 years experience in energy and national defense in the areas of mission assurance, project delivery, and independent assessment in various programs. He is also the managing director and working group coordinator for the DOE's Energy Facility Contractors Group, or FCOG. He works on several projects to improve operational effectiveness by tailoring performance to specific missions. ECA has had the benefit of collaborating with John and his colleagues over the years, and we always appreciate his insights. Welcome, John.
Thank you. All right, first, I'd like to thank Ron and everyone at ECA for sponsoring this forum. You know, workforce development, as you said in kicking it off, is really a critical part of our future success that we as an industry, large businesses, small businesses, and everyone in between need to join together with the Department of Energy to tackle the problem. What's been helping small businesses, and thanks for the opportunity to discuss this today, with our workforce development in a very positive way over the past few years, is that first NNSA, starting 5 or 6 years ago, and now EM are focusing on selecting small businesses to play meaningful roles as part of the RFP process for all of their large contracts at the sites. And this designation of meaningful roles is really critical to small businesses because it allows us to further strengthen our core skills over the life of a 5 or 10 or longer contract, rather than bidding on short-term tasks, which really don't let us hire and do long-range planning like being embedded in the team do. So in the past, as you recall, say a decade ago, the DOE emphasis on small business was really mainly around dedicating some percentage of the future subcontracting dollars to small businesses. They often did that, all the sites did, and it gave a short-term task, and it was commodity type work, really not specialized skills. So when we're embedded in the team, like under the new construct, that gives us the opportunity, and like our key skill areas, you mentioned a few of these, like mission assurance, project delivery, regulatory interface, high hazard ops, we can hire people at all levels, including, and very importantly, new college graduates, given our aging workforce, give them job certainty for 5 or 10 years or more. And then we came out of it as a stronger team and a stronger organization. And we're a resource to the entire DOE complex in those skill areas to help meet mission needs for decades into the future. So it's not just building us for the one contract, it is giving DOE, and I think they recognize this in what they say, DOE and NNSA, that they're building a resource that's available around the country in these key skill areas, no matter who the prime contractor is. So we as a company, we're committed to building and maintaining a strong workforce in all the communities we work in, South Carolina, Oak Ridge, Los Alamos, Hanford, including, very importantly, working with the local schools to provide students both assistance in getting through school and good paying jobs for, the future after they graduate. We also have a unique advantage. We're employee owned, so our approach of operating like a professional family and letting people both grow into a management role and an ownership role in the company affects how we deal. We deal with each other like a professional family, and we extend that to the way we deal with our prime contractors in the community. We're all in this together. We're a team, and it's got to be a win-win. So it's our job, though, given the benefit DOE's given us, the advantage to be on these teams. And we have got to bring the right people. We've got to solve problems for the prime, and we've got to work with the communities on a continuing basis to assure that we're being a good corporate partner, particularly in the area of supporting community needs and in developing the very important pipeline of students needed to meet the missions for the future. We also collaborate with our large business partners and DOE and NNSA in recruiting efforts. And I think, you know, DOE has been, and NNSA have been doing this for the last several years. And it's great to give us the opportunity to participate in those recruiting efforts because it really gives students a unique opportunity. They see the range of opportunities so they can choose whatever's the best fit for them. They want to work for the federal government. Do they want to work for a prime contractor? Do they want to work for a small business? But that joint recruiting really has been a great benefit to us as filling the pipeline as well. So key benefit of this approach that DOE is taking and that we endorse and hope it will continue is to build that pipeline of highly qualified people to meet the DOE program needs for really decades into the future. And I know everyone talks about 40 to 70 years for NNSA, probably the same for EM. Now, just to summarize, there's several parts to our strategy. So the way we approach this, one, let people know what the career opportunities are as early as possible, even in the high schools, working with schools to develop then, second, the right curricula so that when people graduate, they have the most opportunity. And, you know, some of the ones that we've worked with them is a lot of engineers come out and don't have project management skills because that's taught in a lot of schools in business areas. So very important that we have that dialogue with the schools to get the right curricula. Third is we offer internships because that helps acclimate the students to the right area of specialty. Do they really want to work in that area? What are the problems? And then you know, that gives them a chance to test drive us and for us to get to know them. Fourth thing is we put a lot of effort into mentoring students once we support them in scholarships to help them make the best career choices. And that includes whether they join us or not, but we have our management team and our board always available to every one of those students to mentor them. And then finally, once we hire them, providing employees with a career path to advancement, once they're hired in this 5 to 10 year horizon to solve problems, the ability to move to other sites is very, very important. So I think, you know, we're strongly committed to this. And over the last 15 years, we've invested more than $1 million in scholarships and other community support activities. And we couldn't do this without the strong base of challenging work that we find in the DOE projects and programs and the strong partnerships we have with our large contractor partners. So our recommendation to ECA, and again, thank you for the opportunity to talk about how we approach this, but if each community and ECA overall can continue to support the current approach that DOE is taking of allowing and encouraging small business to be named in the bids, again, allocating significant, meaningful roles to small businesses where we have the people, experience, and past performance to justify it. That's going to do a lot to secure all of our future in meeting these workforce needs. So thank you, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you have.
Great, thanks, John. And I will introduce our second speaker on the panel. And if you couldn't tell from the bias of our ECA chair, Ron Woody, I don't have an interesting fishing anecdote, Jim, I'm sorry. But our second speaker is Jim Campbell. He's an Oak Ridge resident for over 30 years, and he is the president of the East Tennessee Economic Council, or ETEC. And he is a fellow at the Howard Baker Jr. Center for Public Policy at the University of Tennessee. ETEC works in strong partnership with federal contractors, Department of Energy, and National Nuclear Security Administration representatives, state officials, small businesses, and other local economic development organizations to seek new ways to use federal investments in science and security to create prosperity, promote regional development, and explore opportunities for growth. Thank you so much for being here, Jim.
Thank you, MacKenzie. Let me start with a tribute to Ron Woody, our fearless leader in the ECA. Ron, right before Christmas, was honored with the highest award the East Tennessee Economic Council gives to its members, and that is the Muddy Boot Award. The Muddy Boot Award symbolizes people who go above and beyond to serve their community and to make it stronger and healthier. And Ron, congratulations on winning that award this year. Second thing I wanted to say, I want you all to look at this. This is a book I inherited in 1994, and it's about an inch thick, and it is the title Workforce Restructuring and Economic Development Activities of the Department of Energy and in conjunction with the East Tennessee Economic Council. In 1993-94 time period, you'll remember, we had just ended the Cold War, and the Department of Energy was anticipating massive layoffs around the complex, and each community was asked to create a community reuse organization and create a plan for transitioning that workforce. Oak Ridge suffered its losses during those days. They were tough times. 7,000 employees lost their jobs in the federal complex here. Today, we have the opposite problem. We're hiring all across the board at the National Laboratory, in the EM program, in the Y-12 National Security Complex. All of our organizations are actually growing in employees right now. So it's been a really interesting time from going from the layoffs to now going to what I consider to be a boom time in the Department of Energy. This has been a really, really crazy year for all of our businesses. At the National Lab right now, 70% of the employees are working from home. And that's a stark contrast to the traffic patterns, to the flow, to how many hot dogs you sell down the street. It's just an interesting time to watch. Y-12, in contrast, has about 80% of its workforce on site and 20% working from home. EM, and you'll hear from Ken in a few minutes, is more like the Y-12 than the EM. All that trickles down and hits the small businesses, the contractors that are supporting the Department of Energy in 1,000 different ways. But the work, interestingly, hasn't missed a beat. We're still meeting our mission objectives, our goals. We're still making progress, starting new programs, initiatives. EM has moved from the K-25 site to now the East Tennessee Technology Park to start work at Y-12 at Oak Ridge National Lab. We're continuing to meet those mission milestones, and that makes me really proud of our community, is how resilient we've been, how adaptable we've been in the last year. And I think we're going to have to stay that way for the next couple of years until we figure out what the new normal actually looks like in our ecosystem here. A lot of what I do is look way down the road and try to anticipate our needs as a community and where we need to position ourselves as a business community, as an education community. And I'll give you an example of something we did about 10 years ago. We knew that there was going to be a high demand for cybersecurity expertise across the board. Every company needs one, big or small. So we banded together with 6 county education systems. And we started having meetings between them, business leaders, chambers of commerce, to talk about, what kind of things do we need to be talking to kids about. And we were talking about middle school kids that they would need to be thinking about if they wanted to have a career in cybersecurity. Fast forward, now 10 years later, we've got a really nice pipeline of young people that have grown up thinking about and preparing for careers. They have opportunities in our community colleges. They have opportunities at our universities to get degrees in those programs that simply didn't exist 10 years ago. I'm real proud of that example. This past year, we added a new tool to that infrastructure, educational infrastructure. with the help of Senator Omar Alexander and the Department of Energy, the University of Tennessee created the Oak Ridge Institute. The Oak Ridge Institute, which is still kind of kicking off, still getting started, was created to build a robust talent pipeline in areas of growing national need and demand. Its goal is to make Tennessee the go-to destination for top-level talent development and discovery. And that's across the board, across the DOE mission board, whether it's Oak Ridge National Lab or the Y-12 plant or EM. The goal is to address top-tier industry and workforce needs emerging from the introduction of automation and artificial intelligence. The Institute will develop scientists and engineers who will be locally relevant and globally competitive. And students will be prepared by teaching innovation and interdisciplinary problem-solving skills. It's a great opportunity to build that talent pipeline at the high end, which we always need here in Oak Ridge. An interesting sidebar, since the Oak Ridge Institute was created, it is now a global center. The International Science Council is locating its world data system at the Institute on the Knoxville campus. That it's currently in Japan. That brings the world's best data science and data science thought processes to the East Tennessee area. And we're looking forward to seeing how that evolves over the next 5-6 years. One of the great things about East Tennessee is our community colleges and our infrastructure that is so resilient and so adaptable to meeting the needs of the business community as it adapts in this world. Roane State Community College and I have had a long partnership, and I asked them if they would supply me with some examples of things they're doing right now, and have been for some time. And I'll run through a few of them for you right now. The Environmental Health Technology degree program supplies health physics and technicians to comply with laws state that regulates the safe handling of radionuclear materials at the facilities in Oak Ridge and TVA in East Tennessee. They've created a real pipeline for the industrial hygiene, safety, sampling, environmental compliance professions across the community. They have created internship programs that have launched careers. Second one, we have 4 cybersecurity graduates working to protect infrastructure at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and also supply interns at ORNL and various other companies involving cyber defense, malware protection, et cetera. Emergency management, EMS education for ORNL, fire department personnel. Established an emergency response program for a private business here in town. They created programs for first aid and CPR for electricians working at Y-12 and ORNL. Multiple safety programs and workshops for the Y-12 Chemical Engineering Technology Program was established specifically at the request of local businesses. I should mention that one of the things we're trying to do right now is recruit radiopharmaceutical companies into East Tennessee. We've got one, we're talking with another one right now, and radiochemistry is what it's all about with them, and having a pipeline to develop their workforces if they choose to come here already in place is just a great thing to have. Let me give a couple of examples to end with. We have a small business here, probably 10 years old or so, but rapidly growing right now. That is in the coating business for all of our different major contractors here. I sat with them Friday and I said, tell me about your workforce and what your needs are. And their interest was in mission critical skills that all their employees needed to have. And it was very important for the owner of the business to make sure that all of her employees shared those skills and had similar training and preparation for that. So she went to the community college, she went to Roane State, and they developed an individualized program, found a professor that could teach it, and set up a program so that every one of her employees on a Friday afternoon can spend 2 or 3 hours learning these critical missions, critical skills for their mission accomplishment. She says that's been a huge boost in her ability to execute and serve the needs of her clients in the contracting community and the M&O community. Being flexible, being adaptable, being resilient is what it's all about right now. Having strong education bones so that we can grow into new mission areas is critically important right now. And I'm really proud of the systems at the K-12 level, at the community college level, at the university level that are creating a pipeline of talent for our companies here in East Tennessee right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. That was really interesting to hear about everything going on in Oak Ridge. I'll now throw it over to the other coast, and we'll hear from Dave McCormick. Dave McCormick serves as the Executive Director for the Tri-Cities Local Business Association. He has 45 years of technical management and executive experience in developing business and providing services to government and commercial clients. He established McCormick Consulting in April 2018, where he provides strategic direction, risk assessment, and other consulting services. His clients now include small and large businesses pursuing business opportunities at Hanford and across the Department of Energy complex. Thank you so much for being here, Dave.
Thanks, MacKenzie. And I have to say it's a pleasure to follow John and Jim. Very interesting comments from both, and it resonates very much with what we're doing here in the Tri-Cities at the Hanford site. So I guess that's reassuring that we really are all pulling on the same rope. TCLBA for short, because otherwise it's a mouthful, is a nonprofit association of local businesses and labor organizations. Really happy to have labor and business together in the group. And we all, our members all support Hanford Cleanup, as well as contributing to community initiatives for economic diversification and growth, and relevant to our subject today, workforce development. And it's an interesting time because it's workforce and workforce development, not just from a DOE perspective, but also a local economy perspective. We're looking forward to a future that could include an SMR or two associated with the Advanced Reactor Demonstration Program. We think that will successfully put an SMR into our grid in the community, and our workforce development is looking in that direction as well. We're really fortunate here in the Tri-Cities to have an amazing partnership between WSU Tri-Cities, a branch campus of the Pullman College, Columbia Basin College, which has really advanced over the last decades. When we first moved to the Tri-Cities in 1976, it was Columbia Basin Community College, and it was strictly a 2-year degree. Now they offer 2- and 4-year degrees, as well as certificate programs that serve businesses all throughout the region. And very importantly, our Columbia Basin STEM Foundation. And together, they're very focused on career-based learning. And a community project that they're all three collaborating on, and we're supporting as well, is a workforce portal, part of a statewide initiative. And we're one of the early adopters in the Tri-Cities, creating a portal that connects students with internship opportunities because, as John pointed out, you need some real world experience along with your education to be effective in the workplace and to really end up where you intend to be and to really leverage both aspects of that. So quite a bit going on in the community relative to workforce development. With regard to the Hanford site, subcontractors, our membership, provide a very meaningful portion of the Hanford workforce. On average, the prime contractors spend on the order of $200 million a year on services that could be viewed as meaningful. They're not always meaningful in the current going forward definition, but they are service categories that have that potential depending upon their implementation. Subcontractors, 200 million a year. Of that, about half is small business. So $100 million a year in services here at Hanford from small businesses. So small businesses are definitely a core element of the Hanford workforce. And as John pointed out, DOE has been doing a great job for years with dollar value goals for small business utilization. And the primes have done a good job, in our experience locally, meeting or exceeding those volume goals. Now that we're looking at meaningful work, we look forward to there being a metric associated with that. And so far, that hasn't been quantified. This is our first year with that meaningful work objective. And so we're happy to see that. TCLBA was a big part of the local advocacy for the move to meaningful work. Increasingly, small businesses here in the community are positioned to provide workforce solutions for the site. The obvious elements of that are project-based staffing. As projects come and go, start and finish, our workforce additions to the site come and go. That keeps the prime contractors from needing to staff up and then let go, not desirable. We certainly here and elsewhere provide niche expertise in an area that is particularly important to a project or to the prime that they don't have a broad need for. They can get the depth they need from the small business community. A number of our members are involved in those activities. And interestingly, going forward, workforce transition. We provide a home for that aging workforce on site looking to leave their prime contractor positions, but not ready to retire, can work full or part-time in the small business community, doing just exactly what small businesses do, providing individuals with particular expertise and experience. A big example of workforce transition associated with the Hanford Mission Essential Services contract, HMESC. I refuse to call it HMESC. I just can't do that. HMESC is CLIN 5, contract line item number 5, which entails the identification of meaningful work scopes that can be carved out for small business prime contracting, which in effect is shifting the site workforce from large business prime contractors to small business prime contractors. And it certainly makes sense to us that that be local small business prime contractors, shifting elements of the work, meaningful elements, to community small businesses, shifting the site as it transitions from operation to cleanup and then reuse into community involvement. We look forward to that. The key to small businesses and subcontractors in general being a solution, part of the solution set for DOE, and their workforce needs is that we are part of the decision-making, or we are considered in the decision-making. When DOE and the primes develop procurement and workforce strategies, it's important that they consider the community businesses, and the small businesses in particular. If we're not part of the consideration, it's very easy for us to lose our ability to be part of the solution. And we've had two recent experiences that I'll share from the Hanford site that are particularly frustrating because I believe they are unintended consequences, but they're consequences none the same. DOE, with the award of the HMESC contract to the Leidos-led HMIS LLC team, disallowed the HMIS pre-selected subcontractors, part of the HMIS team. It brought key specialty expertise and extra capacity, recognized businesses, local and not local, large and small. DOE, for whatever reason, decided that they had not been competitively selected as part of the HMIS selection, and so they were disallowed. And while those small businesses and large invested heavily in supporting the HMIS team, which was successful, they don't have a pre-selected scope on that contract. They are back into the competitive pool for work. And that's the first time that's happened in my experience, which, as MacKenzie pointed out, is a few decades now. That's unfortunate. I won't claim to know or understand the rationale for it, whether it had to do with the proposal or whether it had to do with the selection. I can only comment on the outcome, and that is that a number of small businesses, some local that I'm aware of, participated in the team, but don't have a role on that team any longer. Secondly, we've just finished two transitions effective today for the Central Plateau cleanup contract and for the HMESC. And in those transitions, DOE has gone so far as part of the transition to meaningful work, which is a good thing, they have disallowed the practice of novating existing incumbent subcontracts to the incoming prime contractors for the purpose of transition and orderly management of the workforce from old to new, maintaining continuity. Novation from incumbent to incoming, not allowed this time through. And that, I think, is really tied to the discontinuance of long-term staff augmentation. And I think I've said before, TCLBA is supportive of both moves, but it's happened so abruptly that the outcome, the unintended consequence, is that any incumbent small business subcontractors providing staff aug had their work terminated, and that work is now being self-performed by the prime contractors, and the primes have offered employment to all of the small business employees, such that now today, effective today, the 25th, these small businesses have lost that work and they've lost their workforce. It's my understanding that in only a very few cases was the small business able to retain any of those employees and assign them to other work. For the most part, their employees moved across to the prime contractors. Those are adverse outcomes. We didn't see it coming. We were not able to support an orderly transition, and this is unfortunate because, as I said, I think it's unintended, but it's a clear example of what can happen when procurement and workforce strategy is developed and implemented and it didn't include consideration of small businesses. So my hope is that we won't see that happening in the future. All that said, we're all proud subcontractors to the DOE primes and to DOE, and we support the Hanford cleanup and community growth and development. We're just continuing to fight the good fight. Thanks, and I'd be happy to answer any questions as well.
Great, thank you, Dave. And yes, to segue, this is the Q&A section of the small business panel. There is the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen if you're on Zoom. You can send your questions in there or the chat box. I'll start the Q&A with a general question. So how do EMs, prime contractors, and small businesses in a community work together to assess workforce needs?
Well, let me try to answer that. This is John. We meet early on with our prime and identify needs. And Ken Reuter, I know, is speaking next, and I know I've had discussions. I know how he does this with his subs. I think the key is we do it in cooperation so that we're not competing with one another. But we also do the same thing as what schools are the right pipeline. That's where the prime who's in that area may know them better than we do. And we work with a compatible program and scholarships and in internships and everything else, because to be a good partner, we can't be competing or working at cross purposes with the prime. So it's just part of us being a good partner and a good partnership that we really form from day one. And workforce development is written in the proposal. So it's not after we win is the first conversation we have on this. We really have it as we're getting on the team, as we're preparing the proposal, as we're doing transition. We're having that open dialogue as part of our partnership with a large business at every step of the way. And then regularly, very importantly, once we get started, it's sometimes hard to do this, but we try to discipline ourselves and use our board, actually, our company board, to come in and take a look at least every 6 months at things like this to make sure that we're keeping our commitments, that we're keeping our commitments to our large business partner, to our people, and to the community. So it's got to be embedded right from the start to work effectively.
Jim or Dave?
Yeah, I don't want to steal Ken's thunder because that's what he's going to talk about here in a few minutes. And he's done a really, really superb job of developing and maintaining a workforce that's a fairly diverse group of people, from experts to union guys to the whole gamut. And he's done an excellent job of identifying those needs. I wish, well, I'll let it go at that then.
Great. This is a question to you, John. As small businesses are more involved in the prime contract bid, are you seeing a broadening of the specific skill sets that the primes are looking for in these allocated bid positions?
We are. That's a good question. Thank you. And I'd say as you look at some of the selections and embedded subs you've got around the recent bids and recent selections, where we have compatible skills, obviously, to the prime, but you see small businesses getting embedded in things like plutonium handling and glove box design, and our areas like mission assurance and project delivery, that they weren't done historically. Like I say, it's easy to pick a small business for commodity type things or short-term tasks, but yes, the companies are moving in that direction. But I would say, first and foremost, I touched on this earlier, the large businesses also looks at the small business based on what's our reputation, what's our past performance, can we bring good people, are we a good partner, do we keep our promises, and that brings workforce development into the mix. If we don't have good people to put on the project and keep on it for 5 or 10 years, why do they need us? So the large business we can help them win the work because it does score based on past performance and key people. But we've got to be a good partner, and we've got to bring the people as number one. So again, I mentioned earlier, same thing with we go into it saying, here's the role, here are the people we're going to bring, here are the problems we're going to solve, and then we regularly go in and do governance reviews to make sure we're doing that. No large business either, you'd say, do we, or nor do we as any small business want to partner with any company that won't keep their commitments or work to get the job done. You know, just you win and then you move your good people to the next job. So, you know, that's probably as important to us winning a role and deserving a role on this as anything else. So being small, having key skills is great, but we got to bring the people, and then we got to keep our word. And the one thing that, if I could, you know, we touched on a little bit on, Dave touched on, is there is a disconnect with DOE. I think you talked about areas where you can help us in ECA and the communities. That example you gave at Hanford is not unique. It's part of the governance issue that DOE really hasn't worked out yet. The SEBs make a decision, they announce it, and then the COs and the people in the field on more than one occasion have told us, we weren't part of that. We have no idea, and that's not the way we're going to contract with you. And so we're left, in this case, people who were on the bid and put, as Dave said, put a lot of time into it and earned their role. And now the CO just unilaterally says, I wasn't part of that process, and here's how we're going to do it. So I think that's something we need to work with DOE on, is to get that aligned, where when you write it in the RFP and you get selected, then that ought to be a commitment that DOE follows through on, rather than just giving it to the field and giving them discretion to do it in any way that they're comfortable doing it. Because that really hurts us, when we don't have that disconnect. And that's true in DOE, and it's true in NNSA as well.
Yeah, those are good points, John, and the impact is really a community impact in this particular case, but anything that affects the workforce affects the community. Anything that affects small businesses that are community-based affects the community, and DOE has a well-established priority for community support. It's required of all of the prime contractors. And this goes to a question that Kara has posed with regard to workforce development provisions in proposals. All DOE prime contractor RFPs these days, and for some time, have included the community commitment clause that require prime contractors to contribute directly to the communities as a reflection of their commitment and DOE's commitment. And more, workforce development, economic development, not just charitable giving, which still happens, but workforce development is a key element of community commitment plans that are being proposed by the prime contractors. And to circle back to John's comment just now, what has happened recently at Hanford flies in the face of the community commitment that DOE has.
So going off of that, in EM contracting, is the prime's use of local small businesses part of the formal evaluation or scoring?
Well, certainly their small business subcontracting plan is part of the scoring. Well, and let me take that back. It's a requirement for award, but I don't know that it's specifically scored. Perhaps John can comment on that. It's a consideration. It's a kind of a price of entry, I think, in the DOE procurement process, but I don't think it's scored, no.
In NNSA, it certainly is. You know, it's one of the criteria, and we think it is in EM because in winning bids we've been on, they would mention the addition of these small business partners was considered a strength. Now, they don't give it a numerical score, but it certainly does factor in, and that's new. And I say that's very positive, and thanks to EM and the management for for including that, but it certainly helps, and it's written into the RFPs, and it's written into these source evaluation board's report. So, you know, in some factor, it's handled positively, which again, we appreciate that change from EM.
Great,
And then just
thank you.
say, in NNSA, you actually get, for small business, that small business section, the approach and the teammates is ranked just like everything else, you know, green, blue, yellow, red. So it does get and EM hasn't gone that far to date, to my knowledge.
Yeah, I think as progress moves forward with cleanup and more lands, assets can be transferred to community control. As we make progress, and you know, as for example in Oak Ridge at ETTP, I think that is necessitating, it's driving more attention to community considerations, and my hope is that we'll continue to see that in things like, as John mentioned, actual scoring of small business participation, local small businesses in particular, numerically, not just qualitatively. That'll be a positive step to take.
Another question, are there any barriers to entry that local communities and governments can assist small businesses with?
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that TCLBA does is support the local PTAC, Procurement Technical Assistance Center, that's housed by our Chamber of Commerce. New businesses and businesses new to the area that are interested in government contracting, and in particular, in our case, DOE contracting. We contribute to the council that they're provided, and we invite them to our association meetings so that they can have a networking platform, talk to other small businesses in the area that are involved in the DOE cleanup, and potentially form partnering relationships with them so they can be introduced and be able to bid on work that individually perhaps they couldn't. The opportunities within the small business community are very rich in terms of individual pursuits and collaborative pursuits. But in the absence of something like PTAC assistance or a business group that one can collaborate with and potentially team with, it's pretty daunting to take a poke at the DOE requirements and to be successful early on. You need some partnering to do that.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, good point, Dave. I'd say that the barrier to entry, because we've been in this business 30 years, so we think we know it pretty well. But for new businesses coming in, I know some of the contractors supported by DOE, both EM, but particularly NNSA, have made part of it's an allowable cost where the new prime contractor, Triad at Los Alamos, which is Battelle-led, is a good example. They actually make it part of their job to mentor new companies, to broaden the base, to say, a lot of these companies don't know how to deal with the federal regulations and deal with DOE orders. So they provide opportunities for them to come in, know about the opportunities well in advance, match them up with a part of the company where they can do work, and maybe even other small businesses, and then grow them so that over a 5-year period, they get more companies that are qualified. These obviously are jobs in the community, and then they get more competition every time they go out for work. So I think that's something that I've seen work at a number of sites that probably, if done more broadly, would be key. And again, the issue we're talking about here, we've never had a problem getting endorsement on concepts like that at headquarters, but when it flows down to the field and where everybody is not on the same page, some COs will allow that and others will say, sorry, you can't do it. And the other issue that I think we see that it's a big barrier to entry is at some sites, it's just minimum cost. So it's not quality of people or anything else. It's just a price shootout. And that doesn't allow you to make a profit that you can, reinvest in the community to hire students. It's just pure price shootout. And we still see that at some of the sites, and we just refuse to do the work because it's not the kind of people we want to hire. It doesn't give us the money that it takes to hire people and train them and take them anywhere to give them a real career path. So I think that's one barrier to entry that a lot of companies see. If it's just minimum cost where you can go in and potentially win work, and then when they always try to ratchet down your rates, not make any money at it, that's not good for any company, but particularly a small business.
Ron Woody asked me to interject a little bit about our Friday morning ETech meetings, which are continuing virtually these days. But for the last 40 years, the community leaders, the DOE leaders, small businesses, contractors have gotten together at a meeting we host to talk about what the problems are, what the barriers to entry are, what is coming up, what can you look to bid on in a year, 2 years, how do you form partnerships. Getting into DOE contracting is not easy, and it's not for the meek of heart. You go into it, you make a commitment of time and resources just to develop those programs, to get into the system. I'm working right now with a trucking company that wants to move nuclear materials around the country. They've never done work in the DOE system until about a year ago when they got their first little contract up in Idaho, and they'd like to get into the Oak Ridge market. And what we try to do is introduce them to the buyers, the procurement people, the leaders down here in that Friday morning meeting. And there's real value to that, and just letting people learn. Mentoring is another important thing. John talked about it well. Helping people get through the system and get to where they can actually win a contract that allows them to maximize their company results, their mission of their company. It's just a very time-consuming thing to do, and we try to do that regularly. We meet every Friday, 7:30 a.m. Anybody on this call that's interested in learning more about that, you can go to our website, eTech Online, and learn more about what's coming up on those programs.
Great, thank you all. So another question from the audience: what is your opinion on the mentor protege program? Is it effective, or does it need to change?
Let me try that. I think it's as good as the mentor and the protege make it. DOE certainly has crafted it. They give us the opportunities. And again, we think that in almost every bid that we've done, DOE and NSA have emphasized the importance of including mentor proteges as part of your small business strategy. We've had them in the past, I think on 2 occasions. We're in negotiations with a partner right now because even after 30 years, we want to get into a business line that we're not in right now, that we think a mentor with a company we've worked with for years could help us learn how to manage that business sector. But I say it's only as good as we make it. I think sometimes it really depends on the mentor having the amount of time, and we've been a mentor company as well. It depends on us giving it the right people and the right attention to help the protege company at every step of the way, including giving them some of our work, subbing some of it out to them. But I think the way it's structured and the way DOE scores it is fine, at least in my experience. And I'd be glad to hear from Dave and others. But I think it works if we make it work. I think often when they don't, people will jump into them just to get a mentor protege without really understanding what's incumbent on both parties.
Yeah, great observations, John. I hope that the pivot to meaningful work will grow, that quantitative metrics will be associated with meaningful work. We'll all understand better what it means, and that it will start to affect programs like Mentor Protege, where there is an assessment of the meaningful characteristic of the role that the protege has. So, you know, John's answer, it done well, it can be life-changing, business-changing, and done poorly, it can just be a vehicle for quick contracting and subcontracting. If the focus is purely on volume passing through the protege, you know, that doesn't help anyone. But if in fact meaningful takes hold, then it could change, and we could see more success stories coming out of the Mentor Protege program.
Yeah, one other thing, this is John again, on DOE's Mentor Protege, we've had a DOD as well. There is far fewer reporting requirements and administrative burden. In the one DOD we were in, the quarterly reports and the annual reports take a lot of work, and that's not value added for us. And we concluded the DOE process is much more focused on growing and very much streamlined as far as the reporting process. So again, from our perspective, I think DOE process is one of the best I've seen.
Great. And another question about internships. For small businesses, where does DOE stand on allowable costs for paid internships and employee volunteer time in this?
Oh, that varies site by site and contractor by contractor. I think I talked in one of these forums before about one of the issues that we find at some sites is that the DOE approved labor categories that the CO approves, you cannot bill anyone who has less than 3 to 5 years experience. So not only can you not bill interns, and they've got to be doing meaningful work, but not only can you not bill interns, you got to hire these people and keep them for 2 to 3 years on overhead before you can put them to work. So it varies site by site again, where you have the labor categories, and some of the sites are very good about that. They understand it. And I'm thinking, David Hanford, you still bring on, or you used to, the contractors there, 100 or so in the summer, right? So I know it's an allowable under some of the M&Os. We find it as a small business, as a sub, it's frequently not an allowable cost.
That's my experience as well. And yes, we do have a summer season of internships that I believe are allowable costs under the prime contracts, but I don't have any direct experience with that being an allowable cost for subcontractors.
We still hire interns. We just make the investment. Like I say, it's just we budget for it. But a lot of other companies choose not to or can't afford to do that. And so it would be good if universally it were an allowable cost.
Yeah, agree.
Another question from the audience. Given the direct response to a laboratory's workforce needs and partnerships formed, did Oak Ridge or others provide any investment or seed money for these programs? How involved was the local workforce board?
I guess that's on me. This is Jim. When they say Oak Ridge, do they mean the laboratory or the community of Oak Ridge? Because I don't know quite how the answer to that is the laboratory has been very supportive of STEM education programs writ large throughout the region, as well as Oak Ridge Associated Universities and our other M&O contractors. UCOR will be talking to that point in a minute. There has been substantial investment in education in East Tennessee and across the state because we needed to make some major changes in our standards and norms here, and to be able to produce the pipeline of talent that can work for these kind of businesses that we're talking about. So yes, there has been some interest. The apprenticeship programs are very interesting to me right now, because we've got a part of the national lab is the manufacturing demonstration facility, where they're doing all kinds of work in 3D printing and new kinds of things. They're even 3D printing a small nuclear reactor there right now, and developing a pipeline of talent in that industry, which is going to be growing by leaps and bounds, has been a strong effort by our community colleges here. And so there has been state and local funding. DOE has also participated in that.
And
Yeah.
throughout this, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I just had one thing to add to that. We find in a little bit of science work we do that they are very committed to this, because they're building that pipeline and they understand the need for it. And the other is that Battelle, who is at 4 or 5 of the labs, is just good at this. They're a not-for-profit company. When we've been there sub twice now, this is just embedded in the way they do work. So as the prime, they've done this, they commit to it, and they allow us to. So I think that it's just part of the prime and the small business, but really the prime being committed to it as a corporation and having DOE's approval. But I think on the science side, it's just natural to them. They just do it. They've done it that way for decades, and they're looking for good ideas from companies as to how to make it better.
100% agree about Battelle. Been a great partner in our community.
That's great. And I think we have time for one last question. Throughout this panel, we've heard the phrase meaningful work a bunch tossed around. Has DOE ever defined the definition of meaningful work for small businesses?
Let me just say, I don't think so, but I think it's up to us to say this is a meaningful role. I think that's part of when we put a bid together, our prime, but we as a team need to say this is a role that is meaningful and that the company can perform. Once again, where if somebody builds us in to do project delivery or mission assurance, for example, then we've got to provide qualified people, but also the past performance to be able to prove that we can do that. So I think that's more on us, but has anybody seen? I've not seen a formal definition of that. I kind of feel like Jim and Dave, it's incumbent upon us to define that in our proposals. What do you think?
I agree with that. I think I have never seen a formal definition of that, but I know companies like yours, a bunch of them that are members of my organization, have talents that DOE needs that do meaningful work for the department, and that it's incumbent upon us to help them win those tasks when they come up for bid.
Yeah, this is certainly an appropriate opportunity to engage the subcontracting community, large and small, in helping to define that, because meaningful work, I think the ultimate judgment on that needs to come from the small businesses. That what might seem meaningful to the prime, certainly from the prime's perspective, it may well be, but there needs to be a small business perspective on that as well. And my intent in making these comments is to agree with both Jim and John on this, that it's up to us, the businesses participating in the cleanup, to help define that.
Yeah, and I'd wrap that up by saying none of us who are small businesses got these skills to do significant roles overnight. So it really was the credit to the large businesses that trusted us, that gave us the opportunity, that allowed us fair rates to be able to invest in all of the 5 steps that I talked about to get where we are. And I think that's why I say even we as a small business, once we get on a team, we're we're looking for other small businesses that we can get in. And what does it take to broaden the base, to help them get to where we are after 30 years? Because I think that's part of the planning process. One, it's we corporate partners, because DOE can't figure that out. We've got to do the right thing in the community, and we got to do the right thing with the schools, and we got to do the right thing with our employees. But then all we need from DOE is to give us a chance as a small business to get a role from day one, and then just fair rates, so that with those profits we can reinvest them in the community. That's I think all we as a small business, and I believe this panel would say we need. And I think as we go along, both DOE and NNSA get better and better at this. We do need to work out the details of how it gets implemented in the field, because that's still a little or a lot clunky depending on the site. But overall, there's never been a time that we've gone to DOE and talked about what we can do and our needs that they haven't listened. So I think both at the headquarters and field manager level, they've been a good partner.
Yeah, I'll just briefly echo that, John, and observe that this is a continuously evolving process, and we're moving into new stages of that evolution. And we really can't criticize where we're at today based on the past, because we just got here. But if we all work together on it, we can continue to move this forward and have it be effective and efficient.
Great. Thank you, John, Jim, and Dave for that excellent panel. I think Dave summed it up at the beginning of the panel best. I mean, the community and small businesses, DOE, the contractors are so tightly intertwined that the success and trust just continuously built on one another. So thank you all to our panelists again.
Thank you.
So we have another excellent panel planned for you all, and this will be our case study from Oak Ridge. And this will feature a trio from UCOR, as well as a community perspective from Andy Wallace. So to start the panel, I'll introduce the three from UCOR. We have Ken Reuter, whose name we have heard already on this webinar. Ken Reuter is President and Chief Executive Officer of UCOR, the Department of Energy's cleanup contractor for the Oak Ridge Reservation. As president of UCOR, Ken has guided and motivated a professional management team and hundreds of skilled workers as they successfully undertake the environmental cleanup in Oak Ridge, eliminating hazards and reducing risks in East Tennessee. We're excited to hear from Ken today, especially given UCOR has experience finishing several major projects ahead of schedule and under budget. Ken will be joined by two program graduates, Cheyenne Hahn. Cheyenne is a native of East Tennessee. She is a graduate of Oakdale High School and the East Tennessee Apprentice Readiness Program. Cheyenne has worked with UCOR for 3 years at ETEP for a year and a half, and now at Y12, where she recently moved from working at the Boundary Control Station to housekeeping. She is joined by Anna Summers. Anna is a native of East Tennessee. She graduated from Oakdale High School and Roane State Community College with an associate's degree in chemical engineering technology. While attending Roane State Community College, she worked as an apprentice with UCOR. After graduating in 2019, she was hired on as a chemical operator at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Thank you all for being here. And Ken, I know you have slides. All right.
MacKenzie, thank you. We appreciate the opportunity to be here today and share a bit about our workforce development model and our experiences. We have been on quite a journey with this. We conceptualized it in the about 2016 timeframe when essentially as Oak Ridge DOE reservation, a number of the prime contractors got together and began to look at resource studies with regard to the future. We had just successfully finished the cleanup of the gaseous diffusion plants at the East Tennessee Technology Park. We were getting ready to move into Vision 2020, which was essentially the completion of the ETTP cleanup. And as part of that, we had moved into discussions with the Department of Energy with regard to an excess contaminated facilities program nationwide with a focus here at the Oak Ridge Reservation. And when we looked at that and began to map it against some of the major initiatives that the University of Tennessee Battelle had going on at the Oak Ridge National Lab and the CNS had going on at the Y-12 Defense Complex, predominantly being the uranium processing facility, it became pretty clear that we were going to have a pretty big gap in workforce resource needs in a number of different areas. And it got validated when we were looking at the completion of TVA's Unit Watts Bar Unit 2, and about 1,000 people were coming out of that job. And I think there was actually regional concern that that would contribute significantly to the unemployment basis in the area. And we saw exactly the reverse. They were all absorbed almost immediately into opportunities in the region. And it became readily clear that we needed to get a comprehensive workforce development model together and move out with preparing the workforce of the future as it relates to, in the case of our business, environmental cleanup and remediation. And so for all the participants, you see essentially a visual of that model, which is pillar-based, which I'll talk a little bit about, but it really is grounded in establishing partnerships within not only the region and the community, but at a national level. Matter of fact, just the previous speaker, John Longenecker, and I were talking last week about how we could come together at more of a national level and in partnership and in mutual community involvement investment initiatives around education. And you see that that's foundational to our whole workforce development model. So you see at the bottom there that for us, it really starts in the K through 12 area with a focus on the basics and then extending into STEM. You see a number of examples there that we've now been doing for a number of years. On the far left there, you would see UCOR educational mini grants. We've been investing in a significant amount of the company's money, not the government's money, into facilitating mini grants focused on STEM across a number of different educational communities, but with a real focus on rural areas. And then we've continued to build upon that across the whole platform, as you can see. And now we're doing these work-based learning collaborations with regional and local high schools that has really turned in. We did a pilot of it last year, and we're going to expand that. And then we're working to diligently connect in that foundation to these 4 pillar areas that you see. And really the first pillar, the blue one, is really focused on making sure that we have the broadest aperture, broadest lens. To us, diversity is a lens concept. We want to have the broadest line of sight that we can have that ensures the most inclusion across the breadth of communities we have, and making sure that the communities of disadvantage or difficulty, especially the ones in the Appalachia, are getting a conduit in with the greatest amount of opportunity. And so we source quite a number from those distressed areas, and that's been very successful for us. And one of the ways we're doing that is reinvesting back into the community to make sure that we're helping people understand the breadth of our level of interest in diversity and inclusion. We hosted the first Oak Ridge Community Diversity Forum in partnership with Palisippi's Community College. That went extremely well. A number of really high-end motivational speakers there to draw folks in to become aware of what our workforce development model looks like and what the opportunities that exist in there and the breadth of those opportunities. So So, you know, that's an anchoring pillar for us, and, you know, foundational to community partnerships and community involvement investment. The green pillar is the professional pillar. All the way back in that 2016 timeframe, as we were looking at the exempt side or the white collar side of our work, or non-manual side, we really saw a huge generational gap in those that were coming out of the 4-year program, specifically in the nuclear engineering field, that had an experience or a perspective on what it took to do decommissioning, decontamination, deactivation, and demolition of former nuclear facilities. And there's a large commercial need for that, and there's obviously a huge federal need. That number is very large. It's hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. And so we knew we were going to get in a real war for talent with regard to that. So we partnered with the University of Tennessee and Oak Ridge Associated Universities to develop the first nuclear decommissioning minor in partnership with the BS program at UT for nuclear engineering, in partnership with Dr. Wes Hines, who runs that program, and have had a really great successful outcome from it. You know, dozens of graduates now on an annual basis. They get picked up pretty quick. It's quite a competition. Even though we were at the foundation of setting this program up, we struggled to get our share of those graduates. They're going all across the country working in this area. We also kicked off a co-op and internship kind of based program, and have been working that. And then a lot of grassroots initiatives within the company that have really, again, been building blocks in this area. So we have a Rising Senior Leaders program, which is kind of future senior leaders and executives in the organization. It's not exclusive to just the non-manual professional ranks. We have rising up and coming field leaders, superintendents that are in there, for example. And as a direct investment of my time, I teach. It's a 12 module program, and I teach a majority of that and participate in that. We have a number of partnership efforts with the federal government with regard to things like tuition reimbursement, in which we are using both allowable contract funds and then also seeding that with our own profits with regard to reinvesting in that. I was appreciative of the points that John was previously making. We do host our own university now within the company to essentially grow people in their development within their trade or within their craft, in partnership with a number of outside institutions. And then we're doing a lot more with a professional accreditation and certification that's going very well, in which we're now rewarding folks for carrying their high-end credentials and credentialing and certifications. I guess it's orangish pillar. So our O&M or plant forces focus areas. So these are our represented folks that are working more in the operational and maintenance side and service side of our business. And we've got a well-established now chemical and nuclear operators accreditation program. It can either be a certificate or a associate's degree in partnership with Roane State. That's going very well. Anna's here to share a little bit about that later on with us. It was mentioned she's a graduate of that. And we did a pretty comprehensive look across all of operations and maintenance, and with a couple new waste treatment facilities coming up, and with the uranium processing facility called UPF being ultimately resourced predominantly with chemical operators, we saw a real shortage looming, in the next, 3 to 5 years. And so we really needed to pick it up in there, work with Chancellor Whaley and his team at Roane State to get the program in place, both setting up the curriculum and the lab. It's gone very well, and we're really not seeing a lot of gaps in this area. We've been doing a lot with the DOE National Training Centers, mostly frontline, first line, supervisor leadership, mostly in safety culture. The nuclear safety culture is a very special attribute. We all are familiar with the results that come from it. We know in the DOE industry, it's 5 times safer to work than in general heavy industry. We know it's 30 times safer to work from a severity index standpoint. And, I have my own beliefs there, but my belief is it's predominantly grounded in our collective willingness to invest in safety culture. And that is underpinned by, what the department is, not only what they expect of us, but what they invest in us to make sure that an industry that has the greatest hazards has one of the most significant safety records. And then last pillar is the brownish colored one, which is the construction trades or building trades one. We've got a long-standing partnership with the North American Building Trades Union, commonly referred to as NAP2. That partnership goes back, for me personally, decades. And one of the things where we really became concerned in 2016 was resourcing. As more and more cleanup work was going to need to be done at Y12 and OR&L, and more capital projects to support Office of Science missions and defense missions were beginning to materialize. And again, missions or programs robbing themselves of construction resources serve no purpose. It doesn't fix anything, and it causes unrealistic escalations in cost that then can't be sustained and have very negative outcomes. And so as a result, like I said, we partnered together, and the reservation came together under UCOR's leadership to establish what was called an apprentice readiness program built upon North American Building Trades national program. We modeled it after a program that was used very successfully at Plant Vogel for resourcing units 3 and 4 there. And so we set up an apprentice readiness program. Cheyenne is here. She's a graduate of that. She's going to share her experiences with regard to that. And we really were forecasting a need for about 150 plus folks to stand up a major cleanup program, like I said, at Y12. And the apprentice readiness program resourced over half of that. So we had 70 plus graduates from there. They graduated on a midweek. I think we had graduation ceremonies like on a Wednesday or Thursday. All of them had job offers at that point, and all of them reported to work in apprentice roles on a Monday. And you'll hear from Cheyenne directly, but a majority of them have already progressed to their journeyman classification, which is all what we aspire to in our respective crafts if you have a construction or trades background. We do a lot with the Center for Construction Training and Research. It's commonly referred to as CPWR. Again, that's sort of the lifeblood of safety, construction safety culture. They set the standard within industry. We do a lot with them. I'm honored to sit on their board of directors, and so a number of their programs that get rolled out on workforce development we can implement almost immediately, or be pilot programs for. A good example of that would be the last couple of years on Stop Fall and nationwide, and then some of the latest on on workforce development and education on prevention of struck-by events. And then most recently, it doesn't go unsaid about all the work that CPWR from a workforce education and development standpoint has been done for pandemic management. We've used their model, partnered principally with the continuity of operations program model for training and development of folks on pandemic management. And very excited to tell you that we haven't had a single instance of workplace transmission of COVID. And I think it's grounded in these kind of development programs and our ability to respond to that. And most importantly, meet our commitment to each other to go home the same way we came to work each and every day. Last is we have done a lot, probably around the 2017 timeframe, we cracked the code on how to effectively work in the helmets to hard hats program and do legitimate resource postings and legitimate resourcing, bring our veterans into the construction ranks. We actually had some participate in the apprentice readiness program through connectivity with helmets to hard hats. And that has continued to be a great resource. We're resourcing quite a few electricians out of helmets to hard hats. We had a number of initiatives in that area that have gone very well as we've got resourced to get ready to do the next wave of work. One of the big things that we need is electricians to get buildings safely, intrinsically safe, hazardous energy isolation, and they're heavily centered around that. So we've had a really good experience with our workforce development model. I would tell you that we've probably resourced roughly 600 folks through that. And so they have been a major part. I think it goes to some of the comments that were made in the earlier panel, specifically some of the ones that John made about reinvesting and growing the opportunity. So, in the last roughly 24 to 30 months, we're up 600 FTEs. Most of those folks have come through this workforce development model that represents about a 50% growth in our business, which means 50% more cleanup or environmental risk reduction is being done on a daily basis here in the Oak Ridge Reservation. And although it really comes down to financing the work in the beginning to get the work started, none of the work gets done without the people. 90% of the investment that Congress makes in us goes into people doing the work. So it's a business of people, and we really couldn't have been happier with how well the workforce development model has played out for us. We continue to apply it in preparation for the next wave of work. I firmly believe it's at the foundation of our ability to have got Vision 2020 done in a manner that, it's 4 years early and ultimately reduce the environmental liability of the American taxpayer by $500 million. So, excuse me. So a lot of notable outcomes from it. So with that, you really should hear from folks that have got to experience it. I talk about it, it's sort of a spokesperson kind of standpoint, but it's another to be and have an outcome associated to it and be a participant in it and have experienced it. So I'm going to turn it over to Cheyenne to share a bit her experiences, and then Anna will close out with hers, and then we'll be glad to take some questions from y'all.
It's actually been almost 3 years since I graduated the ETART program. It was a really exciting, informative, just really, really good class. It's a really great opportunity for me. I'm a single mom, so I didn't really have a whole lot of steadiness about my life. And then whenever my aunt, she works inside the Y12 plant, she let me know about this, and I got right on it. I applied, and within a couple of days I got a call, and it's been a very positive experience for me throughout the whole thing. I have worked at 2 different sites. I've worked at the Y12 site. I've worked also at the K25 or ETTP site. At both places, I have done housekeeping, and I've worked in a boundary control station. I've helped hand out respirators, and also help get the personal protection equipment for any of the workers going inside the buildings or any of the roped off areas. And if there's ever a opportunity that I get to do something else within UCOR, I consider it probably be a good thing, because like I said, so far everything's just been a pretty positive experience for me. And it's been a really positive experience for my family also. Like I said, I'm a single mom. Me and my mother, since my father died, we are a family unit. And I have 2 children, and they get to know that mom goes to work, and she feels, they know that I feel like I'm doing something important, something that's helping my community. And I like knowing that there's programs like this, that my 2 girls would get the opportunity to do something like this also. It's I've just been really, really happy for the time that I've been at UCOR. It really has changed my life.
Great. Yeah.
So I've had a really great experience with the apprenticeship program. I started out taking classes at Roane State, started studying with the chemical engineering technology program, and it was through that I heard about the apprenticeship program. They actually came to us letting us know that this is something that they wanted to start. There's a great need for chemical operators in the area. I thought that was really good, made it really easy to find something to do right off the bat. I've been with UCOR a little over a year. Now I am a qualified chemical operator at ORNL. Had a great experience. It made it really easy being a college student and then being able to start an apprenticeship program to being a graduate. And now I have a full-time job. It's been really great.
So, I reflect on both their words and a number of the folks that have gone through our program. And as I've said, just in the plant forces and the construction, there's pillars, there's hundreds of folks that have gone through that. I feel an affinity towards those folks just relative to my own professional, personal background. And so I like to get to know them, and it's very encouraging. And then you see it in the outcomes of the work they perform, that they were given the tools to do it. They were developed and educated to do it. They were included and given the opportunity to do it. And they realized the difference that they're making as part of a broader partnership. And I really have to thank the department who's, works in partnership with us. I really appreciated John's words about how important that partnership is with the department to ultimately enable these things. And it's the broader government too. I neglected to mention that on the UCOR construction piece on apprentice readiness, we put some money into it. The Department of Energy invested some dollars in it, but also did the Federal Department of Labor, because there was a Department of Labor grant through the North American Building Trades Union that enabled the curriculum material, the computers to be purchased. And then those are available for all the future apprentice readiness programs that need to be implemented in the region. As we look at that, there's been a lot of discussion that, in the next year or so, we may very well need to do, a operating engineer, equipment operator, ETARP class. So as we look forward, now we have this tool set to apply and successfully implement it. We're, as new buildings come up for cleanup, we're resourcing them, like I said, through this program. And I just want to echo the points that were made about the contribution that's being done. It's more than just the environmental liability and reduction. It's an investment in this community and its future and the reservation's future missions. Number of the sites we're targeting for cleanup now are going to be future sites for defense program facilities and supercomputing science facilities and medical isotope facilities that are going to make a difference across the whole nation. So yeah, we always have our moral obligation to do the environmental liability cleanup, and these two ladies are part of a major efforts to ensure that we do that and meet our moral obligations to do that. But it's also enabling, future economic development for the region, and be at the center of the future for the reservation. And we continue to look forward to the opportunity to continue to carry this mission out for the Department of Energy and the Oak Ridge Environmental Management Office. I guess we're up for questions now, MacKenzie.
I will turn it over to Andy first. He's the fourth panelist for the Oak Ridge case study. I mean, Oak Ridge is a unique site that there are several counties surrounding the site. And Andy Wallace is a longtime resident of Tennessee, and his father actually worked at Oak Ridge National Labs as an electrician for 47 years. Andy took the position as deputy mayor in Campbell County, Tennessee in 2014. During his term, he studied with the UT Center for Industrial Services to become a Tennessee certified economic developer. Andy, along with other business partners, grew the industry, creating jobs and bringing Campbell County off the state's distressed list. More recently, in February of 2020, Andy took the position of president of Anderson County Economic Development Association, where he continues to work with local industries and officials, regional and state personnel to grow Anderson County's economy and better the lives of its citizens. Andy is currently working on an international economic development certification with hopes of completing it by 2023. Andy, thank you for lending the community perspective to the Oak Ridge case study.
Thank you very much, MacKenzie. First, I do also want to thank the Energy Community Alliance and also Ron Woody for putting on this forum today. When we talk about Oak Ridge, I'm going to give it more from a community standpoint, but Oak Ridge is more than a local and regional employer in this area. Oak Ridge is an economic driver. So let's talk about the areas of Anderson County and Roane County. The lab actually sits in both areas. But when we look at unemployment, pre-COVID unemployment, both of the communities were sitting in the low 3%. During the COVID outbreak, both of them reached double-digit unemployment. They both have been able to pull themselves back up. Currently, Anderson County is sitting at a 4.7. Roane County is at a 5.1. Our area is at a 4.5 overall. Now, those numbers come from the state. Last was updated in November. So we're looking forward to see how much growth we had through December as well. I want to cover a couple of things. One, most of these are state programs when we're looking at our workforce development and our training in the area. One is the Tennessee's Drive to 55. If you're from outside the Tennessee area, a lot of these programs may be new to you, or you may not have heard them. Most of them are available. More information is off of the state sites, but Tennessee realizes that to not only to keep and develop and grow places like the Oak Ridge National Labs, but also our other areas, that Tennessee is going to have a workforce that's ready for the next industries, the next businesses, the next projects that are coming along. So Tennessee has put up, they are looking at a 55% college degree or certificate, 55% of the residents of the state of Tennessee by 2025. And that's a tall order when you look at it. Ways that they're going about this. The state of Tennessee offers a couple of programs. One is called Promise. It's 2 years free college or certificate in a certificate program in the state. Also, for those people who are outside of that high school area, we have a reconnect, which will help the state's adults, complete a college degree or some type of accreditation. That was a program that was started by a previous governor. It's done very well. Both Anderson County and Roane County are above the state averages when it comes to the kids that are coming out that are going into college or going into some type of career or technical training. Like I said, both of the areas is promoted very heavily in our schools. The FAFSA program. So if you have a kid that's in college or going to college, FAFSA is a first step. Both of the areas rank very high in the state and actually above the state averages for completing these programs and getting their students ready to go on to that next level. We've heard some about apprenticeship programs. That's another program that the state of Tennessee and the area, there's actually, with the state's program, there's actually 8 apprenticeship programs that are operating within Anderson County and Roane counties, total across the state. So when we look at trying to get Tennesseans ready for the next level, there's 7,000 across the state that are in the apprenticeship program. That combines 382 active programs. In 2020 alone, there was over 2,000 new applicants or new apprenticeships in it with 30 new programs. Those are offered across the state. Those are also very active and very good about getting our students involved into our local industries, into Oak Ridge and our other industries that allow them to look at what they want to be doing when they get out of school. It also helps the businesses as well. When you look at the apprenticeship programs, the way that going through my notes here. The apprenticeship program is a proven training that uses a talented development strategy for recruiting, training, and it helps with the retention when they complete and go through these apprenticeship programs. Another good one from the state is actually our we'll go back to our high school and our middle schools. Some of these programs that you see here, our high schools in Anderson County and Roane County as well. You can actually go through the high schools and actually finish with your associate's degree before you come out. A lot of this is done through some apprenticeship programs as well, and then also working with our area schools, our Roane State. I know that's been mentioned quite often, Pellissippi as well. But it helps spark an interest, into those industries as well. They can also co-op out of our high schools with our TCATs, which is our Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology. That really helps when we're looking at trying to develop our blue collar, our technical skills that are needed across the board, not only in Oak Ridge, but in the local industries in Anderson and Roane County as well. I'm going to give a little bit of a personal story on our TCATs. Our TCATs here locally in Anderson County, we have a new $12 million, 45,000 square foot higher education, which is a combination between our local TCAT and also Roane State. But the mindset that I think we need to look at and we need to change across the board, and this is where I'll come into my personal story as I close up a little bit. Myself and my wife, I have 2 sons. One decided to take the college route. He's in nursing school. I have a younger son who decided that he wanted to go to a technical school. And when you look at that, you've got a lot of parents, and we have for a long time, we've pushed our children just to the college road, which those positions are needed. But also from the technical side, those skills are something that's needed across the board in all areas. So as parents, we had always thought well, you know, they'll go through high school, they'll finish up. One went to nursing school, the other one had some opportunities in sports to go to college, decided he didn't want to take that route. But we have to change the mindset of the parents to not want to not only push the students into that college career, but to know that our technical schools and our technical degrees, my son is a welder now at the age of 19. But you know, those are skills that are needed. UCOR and Kim was talking about the programs, and the worst thing that you can do from my standpoint is to follow the stories of those young ladies who are success stories and showing what can happen with those career paths. And you know, we need to make sure that we are channeling our kids that have those skills. We are mentoring those kids that have those skills, and that we are directing those kids that have those skills into those jobs, into those programs that will keep those businesses and our industries viable, not only in Oak Ridge around with the labs, but also in our other manufacturing in the area. And, you know, I spoke at the very beginning, you know, Oak Ridge is not only that employer, but they're that regional economic driver. The businesses that they spin off not only need those college graduates, but they also have to have those technical skills to be able to survive.
Great, thank you, Andy. And then if you're just joining us, as a reminder, there is a Q&A button at the bottom if you're joining us via Zoom. And to open the question and answer portion of this panel, a question that came in: how do you prepare for varying workforce needs given multiple landlords at your site?
Can you repeat it again? I'm sorry, Kenzie.
How do you prepare for varying workforce needs with multiple landlords at your site?
Well, again, I'll go back to the earlier point, back to the 2006 timeframe. We do a direct collaborative development program with them, because again, from a resourcing standpoint, we don't really see it as a competitive action, because as I said, the worst thing you can do is get into this competition for resources amongst each other in a common reservation work environment. So we have something we call the Cleanup Advisory Council. The Cleanup Advisory Council is made up of community leaders, regional folks, along with representatives, senior representatives from each of the prime contractors here in Oak Ridge, and then and also the Department of Energy senior official, cleanup official participates in it. And so we talk a lot about resourcing needs and alignment of missions in there to make sure that we're kind of bundling together what the forecast could be for future needs amongst each of the respective landlords, how the land use is going to come to bear, how we layer the resources for that, and how we collaborate. Because I think our view is that if we can get the regional programs, as Andy talked about, to produce the numbers we all need, then the collaborative, collective outcome will be to the economic benefit, development benefit of the reservation. And you know, the reservation is quite an economic development machine. I mean, it produces roughly $5 billion a year of economic development or gross domestic product on an annual basis. So it's for all of us to work together is absolutely critical to making sure that that continues to grow.
Great. And then a question to Cheyenne and Anna: is it possible to stay engaged in UCOR's programs to be resources for new workers? Did you have a notable mentor when you were going through your program?
The person I would actually really consider as my mentor is Lynn Morgan. He encouraged us throughout the program, and he continues to encourage me to keep pushing, to do more, to do the best I can while I'm here with UCOR. So I've always had encouragement from a mentor, and I feel like he really does want me to succeed.
Lynn Morgan, he was also the one that came to us, let us know about the program, and encouraged us to apply for it. And also everybody that I work with, they encouraged us during the time that we were going to school, encouraging us to keep it up, that it would really benefit us in the long run to have this and to finish the apprenticeship program.
Great, thank you.
Mackenzie, let me offer too, just to give a little backdrop to it. Len Morgan's our labor relations manager. And so I think it really goes to the importance in those two pillars, being the plant forces and the construction workforce development, that critical role of labor management, labor relations, and a genuine engagement by labor management into the labor ranks to make sure that they're really there as an enabler of their development and not just an adjudicator of some collective bargaining agreement or contract that's out there. So, I mean, I appreciate the feedback from both of them. And I also make sure I take the action that Len Morgan's head doesn't get too big that he topples over. You know, so. I know him very well, so he's okay.
Great. And how often do apprenticeship training programs or curriculums need to be assessed to ensure they're working and producing the right skill sets?
Okay, I'll start. I'm sure Andy has a point of view there too. We don't do ours on a timing basis. We do ours based on what our work forecast and work sequence is. I'll go back to the discussion of, you know, we're expanding the construction pillar to include a relationship with United Operating Engineers, both their international and their local, because we're seeing an ever-growing demand for with our forecasted work. We're beginning to do more and more soils remediation. That's heavy equipment work. And so where we were seeing peaks to do building demolition, we're now seeing a larger need on a per capita basis for operating engineers. And so it's aligning our sequence and our forecast to these national training centers, to these national programs, these regional programs. TCATS is a good example of that too in Tennessee. And aligning it to some of the programs that like Drive to 55, Tennessee Promise, things that Andy had brought up. But it really is like what we went through in 2016, where we look at our sequence. It naturally seems to play out in 2-year increments, but we don't get blinded by some calendar and say that's the only time we can look. It really is aligning our strategic plan, our work sequence, our pursuit to then what the development program needs.
The apprenticeship program with the state of Tennessee, as I was reading through it, they are already registered apprenticeship programs that businesses can join and go into, and those are the apprenticeship programs are full-time positions with the employer. So those programs are programs that have already been have already went through the verification, went through the steps to become a registered program. And then, you know, Ken also mentioned whereas they're not apprenticeship programs, the colleges of applied technology, the TCATs across the state, there's 27 of those programs or 27 of those locations across the state of Tennessee. And each one of those locations will work with local industry to set up programs or training modules for them as well.
And I saw, Ken, in your pillars that you have a K through 12 foundational block. So and Andy, you referenced high schools and middle schools. So what is the first step or stop for people to start the process of education and employment? Is it connections? Is it someone they know, or community college, or any of the above?
It's really all of the above. I mean, so there's seated efforts in each one of the locations depending on what folks' interest could be. So we, if you were looking to go to the University of Tennessee and study nuclear engineering, you'd see, a direct availability to you of this nuclear decommissioning minor and what that all entails. Certainly the standard corporate postings and things of that nature are there. One of the things I really like about the East Tennessee Apprentice Readiness Program that we stood up is it goes into the local high schools and connects with guidance counselors and communicates availability. The respective state Department of Labor is a good example. We meet regularly with Commissioner McCord and discuss these programs so that I've forgotten the exact website, but this one called Tennessee Jobs or something like that. There's a connectivity through there. Well, and then you heard from our two recipients and participants that, cannot discount the word of mouth and the networking aspect of it. Both are represented, both are representatives of a specific craft local that they participate in. And so there's a lot of discussions, and that's why you see, many examples of multi-generational craft workforce, because they carry these traditions on. We just have to provide them the ability to do that, and the rest takes care of itself.
I know prior or pre-COVID, so let's say pre-2020, I know some of the school systems were looking at getting the students involved and get them into the TCATs where they would actually be able to see some of the programs. Because, your first day of high school, you're already being looked at, okay, what you want to do, what direction you want to take. So I know that several of the communities had started this in the middle school where they're actually looking, where they're getting the students into some of these technical areas to open that up as a job opportunity or a training opportunity that they could have going forward.
Yeah, these high school work-based learning programs, again, we had to take a little break in 2020, as Andy said, but our 2019 pilot program was successful. We've now laid out a way to do that with local high schools in 2021. And so, again, that with internships, it's self-sustaining at that point with regard to how it's communicated and how it's visible to the community, to the region.
Yeah, the link between the industry, such as Ken's, and our high schools is invaluable. There's a lot of times that, if that doesn't happen, the kids have no earthly idea, what direction or that opportunity was even available to them.
So with the pandemic and with 2020, how did the pandemic change your recruiting techniques or your opportunities? Did things have to shift online, and what were the results of any shifts?
Yeah, in our case, we did have to shift to a kind of a virtual hiring environment. We never did not meet our targets that we needed, but it was a pretty big shift. I think the entire country went through a shift to more of a digital experience, a virtual experience. And so what we found were people were much more equipped, maybe even better, more comfortable than we were, kind of carrying that out in our, from a generational gap standpoint. So we did have to kind of adjust how we went at that. And then, of course, how we do our block training or our employee orientation things, those classes became much smaller so we could, meet all the CDC guidelines and things of that nature. And so there was quite a bit of a pivoting and adaptation that we had to go through.
Yeah, there was definitely a learning curve across not only industry, but also our educational. I think they all did a very good job. I'm not going to tell you that we've mastered it 100%, but I think what I've seen from the industry side, from our educational, from our communities, I think we've seen them trying to get to that next level, and I think they've done very well trying to get some of those programs in place. Are they perfect at this point? No, they're not. But no one's sitting back on the laurels and resting. Everyone's pushing forward, trying to make sure that that all the needs are met.
So speaking of meeting needs, you can choose to address this question either pre-COVID or during COVID, but what are some training challenges and how can local governments and communities overcome those challenges?
Ken, you want to go first?
I'll let you go first.
Let me go first on this one.
Yeah.
We've seen it across the board. I actually work inside a chamber of commerce. Don't work inside. My office is located inside the Chamber of Commerce in Anderson County, in Clinton. I get to work quite a bit with the local industry, with the government as well. Then my background coming from the local government in Campbell County as well. The struggles. I'm going to stumble through this. It's like I said, we've not gotten, no one's 100% at it yet. No one's figured out exactly how they need to react or exactly what needs to be done. I know that everyone, what we're doing here today would have been much different. We would have been meeting all together in the same room, being televised, being side by side. But we've had to look and adapt. The communities are doing the same thing. The local governments, they're trying to, as far as the COVID, they're trying to keep everyone at ease. They're trying to meet all the needs from the aspect of keeping the information out to making sure everyone gets vaccinated. From my industry standpoints, and I'm sure Ken has seen this as well. I went to several different Japanese, German, different US based, and they all had different programs that they were implementing and different ways of keeping their employees safe. You had that base that was there that they were all using, but everyone was doing something slightly different that they had seen from across, from their international headquarters. So I'm there again. I'm stumbling. Ken, I'm going to let you take over.
Yeah, I'll answer it pre-COVID. I think it's continuing to collaborate and the educational leaders, both in K through 12, community college, applied technology, and apprentice programs. Don't let us in industry skate by saying, hey, you didn't give us what we needed. What we found is the collaborational piece is the most important piece that then leads to really sound partnering. We're getting ready to stand up some new industrial safety, industrial hygiene technician kind of programs with a community college. If that college hadn't reached out to us 2 years ago and really pressed the issue on, hey, how can we help you, and you're obligated to get in the dialogue, we probably wouldn't be sitting here today, on the eve of making that happen. And we saw that all the way back in 2011 in our relationship with UT and Dr. Hines' program on how can we help with regard to what you need to do with regard to the future environmental nuclear legacy cleanup at the Oak Ridge Reservation, specifically East Tennessee Technology Park. So, and we have very engaging chancellors around here, and I think that is a huge difference. And my answer to the question would be, keep doing that.
Great. Well, thank you to our Oak Ridge case study panel, and thank you to the two graduates that's a perspective that we at ECA haven't heard from, and it was very vital to learning more. And thank you, Ken and Andy, for the UCOR and the community perspective. It was very helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going on to our third panel, which is a new segment actually, and one of the goals with this Advancing Alliances series was really opening the communication pathways, and one of the key ways to do that is to introduce new players to the game. So we will hear from Missy Henriksen, and Missy is the Executive Director of the Center for Energy Workforce Development, which works with electric, natural gas, and nuclear companies and their associations to develop the skilled workforce pipeline to meet future energy industry needs. The Center for Energy Workforce Development was formed to help utilities work together to develop solutions to the coming workforce shortage in the utility industry. It is the first partnership between utilities, their associations, contractors, and unions to focus on the need to build a skilled workforce pipeline that will meet future industry needs. Welcome, Missy, to ECA.
Thank you. I appreciate your introduction, MacKenzie, and it's a pleasure to be with all of you today. I do have a PowerPoint that I'm going to pull up, mostly because if I don't, I will talk your collective ears off, as I have so much to share about the work that CEWD is doing. So let me just pull this up here. And of course, sorry, bear with me one sec. Let me try that again. Well, if not, I will use my PowerPoint and I will just reference it to you all. For some reason, it is not. Let me try one more time. I apologize.
We can also post it later to our site when we post the recording of this webinar.
Oh, here we go. Thank you for that. I think that was the magic word it needed to hear. It didn't want to be an afterthought. So let's see. Let's go. All right. Can you see that, MacKenzie?
Yes.
Okay, great. There we go. So as MacKenzie read in her introduction, CEWD is an organization that was formed initially to address the concerns over so much attrition in the industry from retirement. That was 15 years ago now, and since that time, we've addressed that issue. We're looking at retirements now within the industry projected at about 2%, which is consistent with where norms are outside of the industry. But the importance of the industry working together to ensure the availability of a skilled, diverse talent pipeline has remained. The areas of our focus and what we've chosen to prioritize in the workforce development space over time has really altered in focus, but the need to remain together in this workspace has been consistent. So some of you on the call may actually be familiar with CEWD. I am new to the organization. I've been here about a year now. I've actually worked remotely for much longer than I worked in the office. And during the beginning part of 2020, our board worked in identifying, as we're preparing to start then our 14th year, now 15th year, how we can make sure we're still responding to the needs that our members have. And you will see the goals that we've identified there on the screen in front of you. And I'll hit each of them on a quick slide in just a moment. I should backtrack to say just a little bit more about the organization. We represent the energy industry, as you would expect by our name, which is about 7 million employees. But most specifically, we represent the utility side of the industry, which is about 700,000 employees. As you heard from the introduction, we represent electric, gas, and nuclear, and those include IOUs, public power, co-ops, municipalities, really the full spectrum, as well as contractors. I heard some reference to contractors earlier in the conversation today. We also do work with educators. We have about 450 educators that are part of what we call our NEEM network, which is those schools that have some type of energy footprint within their curriculum. So the way that we have chosen to respond to our members' needs are really in 4 different areas. Some of those are on the external part of workforce development, that is connecting with those outside the industry that we would like to be part of this industry. And then the other is the internal part of workforce development, supporting companies in our area with the needs they have for their own workforce development efforts. And an example on that is certainly something like trends and data. And we'll hit, again, each of these in a little bit more detail as we go through some of the slides. One of the things I should mention when Kara and I were talking about this presentation, my hope today is just to give you a little overview of what the organization does. I know that this new segment is kind of get to know potential other partners. So I'd love to just give an overview. I won't talk about any of these things in great detail, but I hope in providing that, there may be some things that may hit a particular area of interest or need for some of you on the call, and we can talk about these items as we hit kind of the other side of the presentation. So first goal is promoting 21st century clean energy careers. Like a lot of professions out there, there's a clamoring, I think, to make sure that people understand the career paths that are available in this industry. It's not just a job that you would have for today, but it's a job that you can expect to grow in. The amount of money that companies invest in professional development and reskilling employees for jobs that may change, preparing people for jobs of the future. Those are all things we want people to recognize and understand. So for those people that are looking for a skilled trade position, those people that are looking for engineering and technical oriented positions, or those people that are looking for business support, marketing, IT, finance. We've got you, we've got opportunities in all of those areas. So some of the ways that we are working on promoting energy careers, and this is one of our newer objectives, one of the ways we're spending new time and more time in, is really promoting what the industry has to offer. I heard somebody mention earlier the Helmets to Hard Hats program, which is wonderful. We have I'm not going to say similar, but we do have a program that connects both veterans and transitioning servicemen and women with careers in energy. It's called our Troops to Energy Jobs program. And last year, I think we connected with about 23,000 vets or transitioning service members and talked with them about careers in energy. We have a whole website dedicated to Troops to Energy Jobs. And there's a listing there of real-time opportunities for employment on any given day. There's about 3,000 jobs for veterans or transitioning servicemen and women. We also have a military recruiter who helps transitioning servicemen and women transfer the skills that they may have in the military and how those may work in careers in energy. Obviously, in the nuclear side, such a huge opportunity for us to take all those men and women that are transitioning out of careers in nuclear in the military and help them understand their career paths here. So a lot of work done in that space, presenting to different veterans groups. Heard a lot of conversation about apprenticeships. We presented probably 2 weeks ago. Department of Labor has a new pilot program where they're looking to connect as many transitioning servicemen and women and their spouses to apprenticeships before they leave active duty service. So we presented to all of those apprenticeship coordinators for the military with some of our member companies and said, we're hiring, but great opportunity to get the talent that those men and women bring, their leadership skills, et cetera. A couple other things you'll see there that we're doing, but I'll hit on the last two. The first is Energy Careers 2021. This is a slide from last year's event, and I'll just reference it in case it can be of interest to anyone. Last year, we created a virtual career event to expose career seekers and career explorers to careers in energy. We had about 1,500 people register for the event. We had 42 companies from coast to coast that were there to both talk about jobs and internships within their companies, but also current openings they had available. There was an opportunity for people to post their resumes and be interviewed on the spot for short mini interviews with companies that were hiring. We had over 9,000 pieces of content downloaded and 2,000 views of our educational sessions were offered. We were really excited about the opportunity for the industry to come together in this virtual environment we've all gotten a little too comfortable with these days, and really expose students and career changers to opportunities in this industry. So certainly very excited about that. We will be doing a follow-on event this year, Energy Careers 2021. It will be the third week in October, and we will be announcing the date of that soon. One thing I should point out, and this will be very strongly related to our next goal area, which has to do with expanding the industry's diversity, is we did partner with a lot of minority serving organizations to promote this event. with the strong desire to expand the diversity within the industry. The last thing I'll mention on this career awareness bucket before moving to the next goal has to do with the work we're doing to help people better understand the profession, create materials that our member companies can use, our educators can use, community leaders can use to talk with people about what this industry offers. You'll see here an example of 4 different flyers. We actually created a bunch of flyers last year and several different videos that speak to what this industry has to offer. We talk about some of the things that people are sometimes a little surprised, probably not with this group, but we do talk a lot about STEM, and a lot of people don't recognize this industry's connection to STEM careers. So we talk about those features. We are just this week relaunching a new homepage for our Get Into Energy website, which is where we want people to come and learn more about the profession. There's a lot of good content on the current site, but it's not jazzy and exciting. And if I was a young person or heck, an old person looking for a job in this industry, I don't know that our current website would scream, pick us. So we are starting with the launch of the homepage, and over the next couple of months, we will be doing a lot more to build out that site and help people connect with careers in industry. You'll find all of this information on both our Get Into Energy site as well as our CEWD site, in case any of these items can be helpful to anyone. One other comment before leaving this is I did hear from some of the speakers about workforce development boards or workforce boards, and we have started connecting with the National Association of Workforce Boards. In fact, Ron Painter, who's their CEO, was a guest on our podcast. We're really trying to help our members understand the importance of working with their boards. Some are doing a phenomenal job, and some are just starting to discover the wealth of opportunities that exist there. Our second goal in the workforce development arena has to do with supporting DE&I initiatives. And it's very easy for me to talk about our first and second goal together, because it's, as we work on career awareness, it's not just saying, hey, come and work in this industry. It's making sure that communities of people who are currently underrepresented in this industry recognize that this is an industry for all. So we are doing a lot both internally, helping our member companies with their work in this space. Some of those things you'll see are national DE&I template. We have sharing groups and best practice examples. We're working on an industry roadmap for change, but a lot of the work we're doing in this space is more external as well. And you'll see some examples here. We are doing pilot programs, 3 different pilot programs right now. And I keep meaning to change this slide. It says 3 HBCUs. It's actually 3 minority serving institutions in working with mentoring programs on their college campuses or virtually, and energy professionals to help students who may not have ever considered careers in energy with knowing what would be available to them. We're excited. Those are just kicking off right now. We're excited to learn from these and hopefully scale these programs next year and provide some of the lessons learned to our member companies who are looking at doing some recruiting at schools that may not have traditionally been target communities, educational institutions for them. And you know, the biggest thing I can say in this area is probably the greatest challenge for our industry here is attracting a more diverse group of people to skilled trades. Some of you may have already heard from energy partners. There's a strong desire for energy companies to better resemble the communities and customers they serve. So I could talk all day about work in this space because it's really near and dear to my heart, but we really are committed. And I think we've got some A+ examples of companies that are really leading in this area. And we really want to continue to shine a light there. So as people are looking at career opportunities, they see how important DE&I is to our employers. Third goal, this is the bucket for everything in the education space. Largely, I think it's easiest for us to talk about supporting member companies in their training and education. There's so much to be done in that space. It's preparing jobs for people that don't even exist yet, making sure that we're delivering information in a way that current learners want to learn and how they want to learn. Obviously, you know, with young learners, it's all about gamification and things that are cool. Nobody wants to be given 12 3-ring binders anymore. So we're doing a lot of work in that space. And then I've highlighted a couple of things at the bottom that may be of interest to some of you on the call, particularly based on some of the comments I heard earlier. publishing a K-12 curriculum, we do have a lot of materials we made available in the pandemic, at the start of the pandemic, free of charge to educators and parents who are now finding themselves as educators, science-based curriculum that is available for folks to use. That's on our STEM site. A couple of other things that I'd reference to the group. You heard me mention earlier, we have about 450 NEEN schools. We are starting to bring that community together on a quarterly basis to talk about how we can better support their needs, whether it's curriculum, whether it's best practice sharing, whether it is helping get students more interested in those career opportunities. But we're really kind of harnessing the power of all of these schools and its technical colleges, four-year programs, and some high schools as well, of how we can work together to really make sure that we are fueling that talent pipeline for students and career changers alike. We have a program called the Energy Industry Fundamentals Program. It's about a 140-hour course that takes students through all the need to knows about working in the industry. And it's a certificate-based program. We've put about 4,000 young people through the program so far. And for anyone who may be familiar with it, you will probably agree with me, there's a lot of really strong content there. One of our goals for this year is to update that program in two ways. One, we have probably a lack of information on renewables that needs to be included. And also we need to modernize the delivery. I think, a couple years ago, whenever it was that it was put online, we took a paper version and we plopped it online. And again, particularly now as students are used to things having a lot of bells and whistles in terms of online delivery, I'm not sure that we are offering the program in the way that we would like to. So we will be looking at updates to those, including grant funding for updating the EIF program. But again, it's got really solid information, and the individuals who go through that program really do learn an incredible amount about the industry as a whole. We are trying to stay connected to students in new ways through the pandemic. Last summer, we offered a virtual intern challenge where we worked with energy employers, and we invited their interns to tell us something fun about careers in energy in some kind of a fun and cool social media video. And we really saw some great things through the eyes of the next generation of energy professionals. And we've just announced our latest student connection. It's a STEM challenge. And for those of you who may be interested in learning more, you'll find information on cewd.org. And this is a challenge that encourages students to look at the predicated problem statement. Has to do with how they can reduce their carbon footprint related to transportation going to and from school. It's kind of a fun program where we'll be having regional and national winners. All the regional winners will present kind of a Shark Tank style format so that we end up with a national winner. And we're really excited about the opportunity to see what the students are coming up with. And the last thing I mentioned in this kind of education bucket has to do with our support for career academies. We have career academy opportunities for students grades 9 through 12. And it again gives opportunities for them the structure provides opportunities for them to better connect with careers in energy. Then the last goal that we have in this space is really all of the things that we're doing on an internal side to support our members who are workforce development professionals with their needs, whether it's workforce planning, whether it is ways to connect with communities to better promote the industry, whether it's templates for how to recruit more women or how to recruit veterans, or I mentioned earlier our DE&I template. Probably, and then certainly a lot of educational opportunities, both real-time through 24/7 listserv connections, as well as ongoing learning series and our annual conference. Probably to this group, one of the most significant things we do in this space has to do with the incredible amount of data we collect. We do a study every 2 years. It's the Gaps in the Energy Workforce Report. As the name would imply, we collect a lot of data about the industry, attrition, retirement-based attrition, diversity in the industry, number of women in the industry, We have it done in a lot of cross-tabbed ways, and it's probably the most comprehensive workforce data that we have available. One of the things, and again, the reason I bring it up to this group, is one of the things that comes from that data collection is demand reports. So we can look at different regions of the country and forecast what we would expect the hiring demand to be in each of the different regions. And that has proved to be a very helpful resource as our members are working within their state and regions with the workforce systems. I should mention we have about 30 active workforce consortia. I'm hopeful that some of you may participate with your local consortia. Some of them are incredibly active, and some of them are ready to go once there's a particular issue or need that would warrant their focused attention. But these groups work to get, again, it's utilities, contract labor, academic partners, workforce systems that are working together to identify what the needs are within the community over the next 3 to 5 years, and how as a community we can prepare ourselves through all the different feeding systems to make sure that the demand will indeed be met. We are just getting ready to field our 2021 survey in February, and we will have results available by fall of this year. And again, lots of different crosstabs information for those of you who may work with your workforce consortia. I know you'll be hearing a lot from those groups when that data is available. We have 2019 data, which doesn't seem that old, but anything now, of course, pre-COVID seems like it just has a shelf life that's expired. So we're looking forward to seeing what that information may offer. One of the things we are expecting is it will indeed speak to the essential nature of this industry, in the fact that, you know, the lights have got to stay on, the stove's got to be lit. So we recognize the need based and the essential nature of this industry. So we're not expecting any great fluctuations in projections, though there may be some associated with manufacturing that would be reduced, et cetera. So that is an overview of CEWD, hopefully with enough information to share, give you just a spotlight of what we as an organization do, our members' commitment areas. And with that, I would welcome the chance to answer any questions anybody may have.
Great, thank you so much, Missy. A question that came up is, you mentioned your work with schools, and I'm wondering, are you and CEWD seeking out the schools to work with, or are schools seeking you out?
It comes both ways. To be a member of CEWD as a school member, as an education partner, there's no charge, but we do want each school partner to be sponsored by a member company. And that really is hopefully a good thing on all sides. It gives the school a built-in mentoring system where there are people within that company who would be happy to come in or speak on Zoom about real life examples, bring science crafts to life, whatever it may be. So most of the time, the company says, hey, I have a new school that I'd like to make, commit to my sponsorship list. But every once in a while, it comes the other way, where we do hear from an education partner and they're looking for someone to sponsor them. Normally it takes about one quick email exchange and we've got a sponsor, because for the utilities, there's such a great opportunity for K-16 to connect with different schools.
Great. And a question from the audience: what does your organization see as the biggest gaps, career paths, skills in the talent pipeline tied to energy?
Let me answer that question the way I'm hearing it, but if I'm answering differently, I hope the question asker will re-ask. So the biggest needs we have about 23 people on our board, and probably if you asked each of those 23 people, they would answer probably a little differently. So a couple of things. One of the things we hear universally right now is a need for more diversity in skilled trade positions. That is an A+ priority for us. One of the reasons for that is that's an entry-level position. And from there, that career path that I referenced earlier, sky's the limit. So often when people are hiring in more advanced positions, they're going to hire based on who has the most experience. And we want to make sure that everybody, again, communities of people who have been underrepresented, find their way into the energy industry so they can take advantage of the career path journey. And so for us, I think the trying to open more opportunities for people who are underrepresented, particularly in skilled trades, is key. In terms of particular kinds of positions that we are looking to fill, there's some discussion on that right now, but there are a couple of things that I can tell you are always and will probably always be particular needs. Engineers, again, probably no great surprise to this group of all kinds. You pick an engineering type and we need them. Plant operators, line workers, gas technicians, I think are some of the priority areas. We're also starting, those are positions we have historically prioritized in terms of saying we are always hiring here. There's some chatter lately about including cybersecurity as one of our need-based positions as well. And I think just trying to figure out more the semantics of, does that belong in IT or is that a standalone promotion? But there's been a lot of chatter that hasn't been officially adopted as one of the need priorities, but based on what we're seeing and hearing, I expect it will be. So I think that covers kind of one particular area, and then our need positions. The other thing I would say, and it may be a part of an answer to this question, is there's been a lot of discussion on preparing people for the jobs of tomorrow when we're still figuring out what those jobs look like. Continuing to strengthen and build the nation's electric grid. I hear the most complex machine in the world, and preparing people for how that's going to look in the future when we ourselves may not know. I continue to hear that as a challenge as well. So hopefully there's an answer somewhere in all of that that may be useful.
Great, thank you. And another question, you're speaking about energy jobs. Does CEWD get specific for someone looking to work in solar or nuclear or hydro? Is there currently a preference for green energy jobs? And do we need to change how we talk about nuclear jobs?
So a couple of things in that. We have a job board. It's at getintooenergy.com, which is, again, getting a facelift this week. The front page is, and everything else will follow. So getintooenergy.com. We have a job board there. For anybody who is a CEWD member, it pulls their job listings every night. So there they connect through the magic of the internet, and their job boards are scrubbed, and it appears there's thousands of jobs that are posted on any given day. We promote all jobs in the industry. And from CEWD's perspective as an organization, we don't care if somebody wants to work in solar or gas or nuclear or electric. We want them to pick the energy industry versus the other wonderful industries that are out there. I say that a little quietly. My husband works in workforce development for another industry. So he and I are sometimes on these dueling calls of pick our industry. So we just want the best and the brightest to pick this field. Again, where they go doesn't matter to us. Historically, CEWD, as I referenced earlier, works with the utilities, and most specifically with the generation and transmission of electricity. Our board just voted, and just this month, we have now expanded our umbrella to include not just generation and transmission, but also energy storage, electric vehicle infrastructure. We got to figure out, how all the people that are going to be needed to power all these electric vehicles, and renewables. We've not done as much in the with solar and wind, but so many of our utilities are working in those spaces. We want to make sure that as their portfolio expands, our service to them and what they may need from us as an organization continues to expand. In terms of nuclear messaging, as you may have seen in one of our introductory slides, we do work with NEI. Maria Korsnick, the CEO of NEI, is on our board of directors. And we work with Maria and her team to make sure that all of our messaging about careers in nuclear is consistent with NEI's messaging. One of the flyers that I referenced that we've just done, you will not find it on our website yet. It will be up there shortly. It's about careers in nuclear. And we worked with the NEI communications team to make sure that our message is consistent, and all positioning with a new website that we'll be building out. There will be a whole page dedicated to careers in nuclear and careers in gas, careers in solar, et cetera. And again, we'll make sure that the messaging is consistent so that we are all singing from that same sheet, which is incredibly important as we're trying to communicate about the opportunities that exist here.
Great, thank you. That is one of the hardest parts about nuclear workforce is the reputation tied to nuclear, unfortunately.
And we're really, with that, I would just mention with all that we're doing, we're trying to tell the stories. I really enjoyed hearing from the women who spoke earlier about their journeys and through the apprenticeships. And we are trying to get out those stories so that people connect with, with other folks who may have had some kind of similar experience, or I'm passionate about that too, and really trying to tell those stories through new social media efforts and things like the career event that I mentioned. But telling the nuclear story is a huge part of our work.
Great. Thank you so much for your time today, Missy. I really appreciate you taking the time. And it's always interesting to hear new perspectives and all the initiatives happening across the country that we are learning about.
My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Of course. Thank you. And now for the final panel of the day, we are going to turn it over to the Department of Energy Workforce Efforts. And we will hear from Kristen Ellis and Sharon Mara. We've heard from small businesses, we've heard from the case study from Oak Ridge, and the collective efforts I think that DOE will explain in the next panel will really bring it home. So thank you, Kristen and Sharon, for being here. And Kristen Ellis, who we're going to start with, is a longtime friend of ECA. She is newly serving as a senior advisor for STEM and talent acquisition within the Office of Environmental Management. In this role, she assesses future STEM workforce needs of the entire EM workforce to include sites and contractors at an enterprise level. She advises on EM workforce issues, identifies opportunities to maximize the efficiency and effectiveness of the workforce, to include developing strategies for leveraging existing resources to meet needs across the EM complex. Some of you may also recall that in her previous incarnation, Kristen served as the Chief of Staff for the Undersecretary for Science, Paul DeBar, overseeing all daily operations, including personnel, budgets, policy, media, and interface with DOE senior leadership. Congratulations on the new position, Kristen, and it's quite timely, and thank you for your continued support for ECA in our communities. We in DOE are lucky to continue to work with you.
Thank you for the introduction, and I'm glad there's no bad blood for me hiring Allison Finelli away from ECA a few years ago now. And of course, I've worked with you all for many years now, and it's nice to participate again. A little strange not to see everybody's faces, but we're all getting to be experts on Zoom these days. But anyway, thank you for the invitation. Looking forward to chatting today. And thanks also to Sharon, since I dragged her along for this panel. And I'm sure she'll bring lots of insight to the group. So the way I wanted to kind of organize my formal remarks, which as you asked for 5 to 7 minutes, we'll see how close I can hit the mark on that, was to think about both challenges and opportunities for STEM in environmental management, also in part of the whole Department of Energy. And, I spent a lot of time in my previous position with Undersecretary kind of noting the disconnect about the basic identity of the Department of Energy and how people understood it to mean what it was. And what that means for workforce is, I think still in the public, that the notion that the Department of Energy is something more than windmills or gas prices is a big concept we have to overcome. I think if you did like the Jay Leno person on the street asking someone to name a national lab, it would be embarrassing, the responses we get from 99 out of 100 people. But, fortunately for those in the energy communities, Lance, you all are a lot of you are living in the communities that are adjacent to these national labs and these environmental management and NSA and Office of Science facilities. So at least you have a little better passing knowledge about them than I'd say the DC area. And so what does that mean for an office like environmental management as we're thinking about workforce and we're thinking about planning for the future? So, it's a not too funny joke that I'm coming up on 20 years at the department this summer in 2021. And it's still more common than not that most meetings I go to with other DOE officials, I'm the youngest in the room. So there's still an age gap in getting the next generation into the agency. And I'm really excited about making some headway in that. We're looking forward to getting the new results from the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey, which is done every year. And it's a nice benchmark to see how employees feel about working at the department. But one of the categories in there is, what is your age? And the last version I saw of it, and again, I haven't been in the program for too long recently, but one of the past versions was, I think it was under 8% for people under age 30 in the department who are working in environmental management. So if you don't, that means we're obviously missing some talent coming into the program, and I suspect that the problem's just getting worse. And for the local communities who live in, for example, Oak Ridge or the Tri-Cities, with the benefit of a national laboratory in their communities, certainly the national labs are recruiting aggressively for the best and the brightest in all the scientific fields that the national labs represent. So I think the Environmental Management Office, has got to compete with that as well. So that's another, we'll call it a challenge. I'm not going to call it a problem. And then, just kind of to lay the groundwork to anyone who works in a federal agency in DC has the mindset of worrying about what OMB thinks about their program, or what, how Congress thinks about the program and how things get funded. So anyone who from the ECA days remembers the Energy Parks Initiative, or for the South Carolina communities, the AMC, Advanced Manufacturing Collaborative. Both of these are examples where, we've got great proposals that have a lot of support, but for a budget examiner over at OMB, maybe they have a lot of questions about it, and we spend a lot of energy trying to address those. So that is important for the STEM issue generally, because for the Department of Energy, somewhere along the way, it's been communicated that the Department of Education is the owner of STEM. And so for the Office of Science, of course, they're doing a lot of STEM work. Most of it is with PhD students or other folks that are finding their way through the labs. But I think it's going to call for a more creative approach to addressing some of these kind of default positions on how people think about what can we do with STEM, or what can we do with workforce. But I do really feel very optimistic that there's lots of opportunities there, and I would encourage ECA to start thinking creatively about several topics. And so I'll throw a few of them out. And again, I'll caveat this with, I'm still very new to this position, and I'm still doing a lot of data collection on what I think the issues are, and looking forward to working with the EM team more closely and ECA more closely to get up to speed on all these issues. But I think one of the greatest benefits in EM is that we have existing ecosystems already in place that can address some of these issues. Like we were talking about the national labs, and for some of these sites like Oak Ridge, where you have the Y12 facility, you've got the cleanup side, you've got the science side, and for places in New Mexico, where for the state of New Mexico, the Department of Energy is the #1 employer in the state. So thousands of jobs in the laboratory infrastructure. So we are a known entity, and I think there's a lot of little pockets of individual programs that are very strong that are worth looking at again. I know ECA had a meeting, I can't even remember when it was, but it was down in the CSRA Aiken area, and we talked about the program that had put in place for the nuclear workforce. And it was, you had trade colleges, you had four-year colleges, you had master's degrees and PhDs, and all of the community came together and parsed out which community was going to offer which curriculum that DOE needed to generate a nuclear workforce. And I know for the Savannah River area, they have a lot of the nuclear plants, we've got Plant Vogtle, everything else in the region. So we're also competing with those jobs, but that helped establish the need for a pipeline of workers. And I think it was able it was a great program where we could get people involved. And I know that we also did a similar program in Los Alamos and in the Tri-Cities in Washington. So we have some examples that I think are worth looking at again, and I'm sure we'll be looking at them moving forward. Additionally, I know I've heard some conversation among ECA about interest in what's being laid out with the new administration and the new team coming in at Department of Energy. You've seen already their focus on clean energy jobs and bringing in, there's a energy jobs position that's new to DOE. So to me, it feels a little bit like the early days of the ARRA Act back in 2009, where EM really had an opportunity to take advantage of some additional funding that was available in the Stimulus Act, and we're able to inject new jobs into the communities. And we have a really good story there in EM of having life cycle cost savings that came out of a Stimulus Act. And the focus on clean energy and clean energy jobs may be another opportunity for EM to demonstrate a reason to accelerate some of the work to demonstrate cleanup in the environment. So again, this is Kristen Ellis speaking personally. This has not been vetted through my EM management, and this, the Biden team's been here for 4 days, so I'm certainly not speaking on their behalf either. But just encouraging the group to think about what opportunities may exist as the new folks are coming on board and getting settled. So, the other thing that I like to point out for EM, like the jobs program or the colleges program that I was mentioning at Savannah River. So for the Office of Science, who supports a lot of PhD students and postdocs and all of those things, it's a very competitive field where you're trying to get money for your specific source of research. And for EM, maybe the site needs nuclear welders. Maybe we need, someone with, we need more people to represent trade jobs. And it doesn't have to be a PhD, fusion energy expert. There's a lot of other opportunities that don't require 8 years of school. And there's not, and even beyond STEM, there's a lot of opportunities in the EM program. So I think, again, creativity and being willing to look at new ideas and approach things a different way is going to be the key to being successful moving forward. So I'm excited that I'm coming back to EM. I'm excited to be working with ECA again. I'm really excited that EM has prioritized this issue and wants to take an enterprise approach and really work at improving our program and getting the next generation in to continue the successful cleanup that's been happening in the EM program. And, I know UCOR was on earlier. They've had a fantastic 2020 and all of the footprint reduction that's happened at Oak Ridge and all across the complex. I'm not going to name every single one, but it's been a fantastic year for EM, and we're happy to continue that momentum. So I'll close with one quick point and then turn it over to Sharon, and looking forward to a further discussion here. I recently learned that one of the female astronauts that's being considered for the Artemis program, whose name is Kayla Barron, is a graduate of Richland High School. So I think the Tri-Cities and the EM communities generally are obviously doing something right in STEM. If we've got an astronaut getting ready to go to the moon that came out of the local communities in the ECA. So I think it's a great day, great year. Looking forward to getting started with EM, and I'll turn it over to Sharon or MacKenzie, however we're organizing this. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thank you so much, Kristen. And yes, our second speaker is Sharon, and Sharon Mara is the Deputy Director of the Savannah River National Laboratory. She is responsible for the management, operation, safety, and program direction of SRNL, which conducts research and development in chemical, environmental, and energy sciences, nuclear materials management, and national security solutions. She has over 30 years of experience in engineering and research at the Savannah River site. and the material manufacturing industry, including 20 years in management and technical leadership in nuclear waste immobilization process and technology development. Welcome, Sharon.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. What I was going to do is just give you a few comments, maybe to add to what Kristen said of some of the things we're doing at Savannah River National Laboratory. Just to put it in context, and most of you may already be aware of this, but SRNL makes up about 10% of the population of the Savannah River site. And we're at a key crossroads. DOE, Office of Environmental Management, is splitting our contract out from the larger M&O at the site. And matter of fact, an announcement was made a few weeks back on who the awardee was, and that entity is just waiting for the notice to proceed. But that creates some opportunities for the laboratory to expand its area of research. We are an EM laboratory, but are involved in a lot of other areas such as national security, energy security, and nuclear materials and things like that. And so obviously workforce is a big part of that. Kristen mentioned some of the local things here in the central Savannah River area in South Carolina and Georgia with the nuclear workforce, and the laboratory does take advantage of those opportunities. For example, we have a 2-year college here, Aiken Technical College, that has a program to train our radiological inspectors, our RADCON workers, and some of our operators. And the laboratory today and in the future will continue to take advantage of that because we do need those support folks, and hope to continue to partner with the other contractors here on the site. But we've also branched out a little bit. The University of South Carolina has a campus here in Aiken, and we've partnered with them over the last year to develop a leadership training. They have a pretty expansive program in that area, and we thought it would be beneficial for especially our technical leaders to have the opportunity to participate in a program without going, halfway across the country to a training class. So we had paused that with the COVID situation, but we had gotten several classes in before that started, so we continue to look forward to that. And Kristen mentioned the Advanced Manufacturing Collaborative, which is another opportunity for us in the local area here to partner with the university, partner with the local school districts and in industry to try and build that STEM future. So that's something on the plate from us as well. When you think about the broader workforce of a national lab, and Kristen mentioned that we're the newest national laboratory, and maybe we're the least well known, but we've been really trying to focus on the workforce the last couple of years. And kind of the things we're focusing on is bringing in the best talent, engaging them when they're here, and if they stay with the laboratory, and I'll talk about that in a second, that's great. But if they don't, if they find something else, or perhaps they're a postdoc to move on to something else, that we leave them with a positive view and they spread the word. Because, a lot of, I think, hiring and bringing in new talent is getting that word of mouth out there. And I think that was mentioned a little bit earlier in one of the sessions as well. Kristen also mentioned bridging the age gap. And so that's an area we've been focusing on as well. And I am actually I'm quite a bit of passion for this, but in the laboratory, our average age 5 years ago was 51, and I just checked it last week, and we're down to 45. And I'm not saying that as a way to say, we've had a lot of people retire, but more is to say we've kind of leveled. We have a broad spectrum of experienced and less experienced folks, and think that's powerful because we always talk about the knowledge gap. But as we can bring folks in and team them with senior folks, then that's really a good thing. And one of the areas we focus on is a postdoc program, and we've substantially increased the number of postdocs in the laboratory over the last year. And we've also put in place that they may not all stay. The postdoc program is such that, some may find they want to go back to academia or a different industry. but we're really trying to engage them both internally to the laboratory and in the community so that even if they leave with a positive viewpoint. So from a community engagement, and again, this has been challenged the last year with COVID, but we're really trying to get, especially our newer employees, engaged in the community, whether that be a science fair, volunteering at a local school, whatever it may be. And an example of something, we partnered with a local nonprofit, the Citizens for Nuclear Technology Awareness, back in the fall, and we built these STEM kits, as we called them. So different things were put in them, little games or, just things that kids could take home and work on. And one of our local rural school districts had a virtual kind of STEM fair. And so the kids drove up, with their families and picked up these kits, and we helped put them together and put instructions in them. And, hopefully maybe the kids could take them home and maybe something would spur their interest. But it also was a way to show that there is a national lab in this community. There is a whole site here for the nuclear industry, and just maybe we could get one student to say, hey, maybe math or science or engineering or something like that is something I want to do. And we've tried to use examples like this over the last year. We've done all of our recruiting virtually, and we've been more successful than I ever would have thought. And some folks, especially some of these postdocs, have accepted jobs sight unseen for the area. Maybe they're coming from a different part of the country. We've hired quite a few folks from the Northeast and the Midwest, and maybe they've never been here in the Southeast, or maybe they were here, when they were a child or something like that. But we've tried to get folks to provide testimonials, if you will, what it's like to live here. And we feel like if they can feel engaged in the community, especially as younger folks come and maybe they start a family and they have their own kids in the local school district, we can continue to promote that this is a good place to live, and then they can give back from a STEM perspective. So this is an area that we're going to keep focusing on. We do have interns. So typically these have been undergraduate students, and we manage the Minority Serving Institution program for EM. So we're hoping to work with Kristen and others to continue to expand that, and maybe look at bringing graduate students with the laboratory's new contract and the university partners associated with it. We're hopeful that can expand that, and again, kind of almost a snowball effect, to take something small and build it, both that helps us from a recruiting perspective, but also from an outreach to the community perspective. So anyway, I'll probably leave it at that. Those are just some examples that we're trying to work on, and in the coming year, the idea of the outreach and the building the STEM in the community is something that we're really hoping to focus on, and especially with the new talent that we have here in the laboratory. So thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Sharon. And to start our Q&A, we have a question from Kara for Kristen. Kristen, do you think that EM will work more closely with NE on nuclear workforce development? Perhaps a green job working on a low carbon future is an easier sell than cleanup jobs. But obviously cleanup workers are needed far into the future too. Any thoughts?
Well, I know ECA spends lots of time talking to NE. Maybe we should do a joint meeting with EM and NE and ECA to talk about this as an issue. It's not something I've given a lot of thought to yet, but I'm happy to take it back and look at it further. I think, with the start of a new administration, what's going to be important is for getting the new team up to speed on kind of where EM is generally, but certainly as they start to focus on what their jobs mission looks like and see how EM can fit into that, I think, NE is certainly a part of it. The evergreen issues that impact workforce in that ECA is very familiar with, like long-term waste disposition and, dare I say, Yucca Mountain or whatever an interim facility will look like. All of those things that folks maybe have never heard of before on the new leadership team. Certainly, it's going to be a great opportunity to raise some of those issues again. And again, I'll reiterate that we're on day 4, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Monday. Yes, day 4 of the new administration. So obviously very early to make predictions on things. Not sure that's very responsive, but that's the best I've got at this point.
No, I appreciate it. And you touched on this earlier in your remarks, but with a new focus underway on energy jobs at DOE, how can local communities support your efforts both in headquarters and around the sites?
So I think EM is successful because we have such great partnerships on the ground in all the different communities. So I think, as I said earlier, 2020 was a great year for progress in the EM program. And so whatever helped facilitate that, keeping that moving forward is going to be really important moving into 2021. And, we've got a great EM leadership team who has spent lots of time working with all of these partners in our communities. And I know, continuing to address issues as they come up and working through them in an open and transparent way is going to be required for us to continue to make great progress. As the job stuff develops and as more information becomes available, ECA is very plugged in with the various EM offices. You've got the Intergovernmental Program Office, you've got the Communications Office. So we're happy to keep the dialogue going as more detail becomes known.
And for Sharon or Kristen, were there any initiatives that were developed in 2020 as a result of the pandemic that you're looking to keep using in the future?
I'll take a first crack at that and then turn it over to Sharon. I know for the Department of Energy at headquarters and probably at the sites as well, the transition to full-time telework was something that had never really been attempted before. And I think that I know they're looking at a lot of lessons learned that came out of the telework situation. And, there's talk of kind of reframing what full-time work at DOE headquarters looks like. And maybe that's, do all positions need to be physically located at a headquarters building? Or, are some of them eligible to be full-time telework? And I think that's a really important cultural change. And for, you hear about the millennials who want to have more telework options and, more work-life balance options. I think it's refreshing that that's something that's being discussed. Again, with the new transition, I'm sure they'll be looking at telework as well. But I think that's one big major change that I think came out of the pandemic, and that it may still be around after the pandemic is concluded and we're back to more like normal operations.
And I would just add to that, along those same lines, when you think about a laboratory and folks needing to come in and work in their laboratory, full-time telework isn't going to be possible. But I think what we've seen is there are opportunities for part-time. Sometimes a researcher may just need to go home and work on a technical report. So I think this has opened up opportunities for that. And also, like I mentioned earlier on the hiring, I think some of the virtual, at least initial first interviews and things like that can be done remotely and perhaps even more effectively than maybe we've done in the past.
Great, thank you. And another question. We've heard about workforce efforts coming out of the Department of Labor. Should ECA and our energy communities be doing more outreach to them as well?
What workforce efforts have you heard about? That's not something I'm familiar with. I don't know who asked. Looks like it was Kara.
Kara, yes. No. Kara, you want to unmute and ask?
Yes, I suppose I can unmute. Nothing specific, just we've heard, that there are definitely resources available for workforce efforts that come out of the Department of Labor. And I am not, super familiar with that, but I didn't know whether or not we should be, looking at funding opportunities and help that come out of Department of Labor related to energy work as well.
I think we should follow up on that. I'd be happy to explore that if that, again, just not knowing anything about it, but I think it's worth a follow up after this session, maybe before your next one. It makes sense
Sorry.
to look at.
Thanks.
No problem.
And Krista, I know you keep highlighting that we're very early into a new administration,
4 days.
but yeah, you can count it on one hand. That's a whew. Do you have any predictions on what we can expect in 2021?
I guess I should say 4 work days because there was a weekend in the middle there. I can pretend like I'm Seth at the intergovernmental meeting and give my view from DC, and then Terry Tyborowski, he used to say, here's my crystal ball. This is what I think is going to happen. I would expect that we get the secretary confirmed fairly quickly. And I just seeing how many of the team that's at DOE had some ties or either were here previously under the Obama administration. I think they're ready to get going, and they know DOE. So that's helpful. That there's probably not going to be as much of an education timeframe, but so that's helpful. And if it was folks that you interacted with, 4 years ago, that makes it a little easier hitting the ground running. But I do think we should expect a lot of activity right away. And I know there was some when you're in DC, the fun water cooler talk is who's going to be nominated to head which office, because we're all a bunch of nerds inside the Beltway. I haven't really heard much chatter. There was more, weeks ago. So no, I'm not going to. Maybe Seth has a prediction for who's going to be the front runner for who's going to head the EM office, but I haven't heard much lately. So we will. I'm sure we'll hear more soon.
Great. Well, thank you to our last panel for taking the time. I really appreciate it, and I know everyone in the audience appreciates it.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is the conclusion of our 3rd webinar in the Advancing Alliances series. We do have a save the date announcements on Wednesday, February 24th of 2021. ECA will be hosting a webinar on nuclear waste solutions. This will be Defense High-Level Waste, a Path Forward in the New Administration. The webinar will include discussions on DOE cleanup priorities, how Congress plans to address nuclear waste, storage options, and what to expect in the incoming Biden administration. On February 24th, we'll be more than 4 days into the new administration, so we should have more crystal ball predictions by then. Thank you again to all of our panelists and the audience members for participating. We really appreciate your continued interest. And if you have any follow-up questions or comments, visit energyca.org and you can contact the ECA staff for any help that you need. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Good job, MacKenzie and Kara.